Morning, everybody. We're going to get started. It's Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024. This is the Carson City School District meeting of the trustees. So we're calling the meeting order at 6:30, and agenda item 1 is adoption of the agenda. Have a motion by Trustee Walker, second by Trustee Ramirez. Any board comment? Seeing none. Any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none. Board, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item 2 is the flag salute. Trustee Walt, would you lead us off?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Item 3 is the superintendent's report. This is for information only. Superintendent Fueling.
Thank you, President Cassioppo. This evening, we have a little bit of a celebration here. We have Mr. Jocks representing the Carson High School band, and we have some kids that are pretty amazing. So, Mr. Jocks, would you like to come up and introduce your students for All-State Band?
Yeah, well, now why don't you bring them up to the chairs and just start off that way, introduce them, and then we might want to ask them a few questions. And then when you're sorry, as once you start speaking, we just need you to speak into the microphone. Yeah, just push the button, make sure the green light at the base is on, and fire away.
All right, here we are. Oh, there we go. Okay, so first of all, a little background information. The Nevada Music Educators Association's All-State Festival includes a middle school and a high school level group of bands and orchestras. These ensembles include woodwind instruments, brass instruments, and percussion instruments. And these students will audition for this group, and if they earn a spot, they work closely with a guest conductor for 2 days before performing a final concert. And this will occur February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, coming up just next week. These students who make the All-State bands are the top performers in the state of Nevada. And they have earned this position because of years of studying on their instruments and dedication in what they do. So statistically, these students are among a prestigious group because most of the students who make this group are from Clark County, Vegas area. And we have 8 students that made it in Washoe County out of all the high schools there. And of all of the other schools in the state of Nevada outside of Washoe County and Clark County, you are looking at the 4 students that represent all of rural Nevada outside of those 2 counties. And it's pretty incredible. This is like state for athletics, but for music that, you know, since we don't compete, they make it into a state level group and they get to perform among the elite and the best of the best. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome up each of them to come join us. First of all, it will be on French horn. We had freshman Jacob Blandford. Congratulations. And then we have 3 seniors. The first of the 3 seniors is clarinet player Drea Cabral. And next is trumpet player Nathan Parsons. And last, but certainly not least, percussionist Tessa Payan. So once again, thank you to this distinguished board and to Renee, who I worked with closely to get this invitation, and Dan Davis, who's worked really well in the public relations department, for making this all come together so I could recognize these students and for you to allow this to take place. We're really proud of them. Thank you again.
Yeah, Dan Davis is going to take some pictures of you, and then we'll probably want to extend some congratulations and maybe ask you a question or two. So first of all, I guess I'll lead us off. I just want to say congratulations. It's quite an honor. I mean, no doubt. So when I was their age, I was involved in band and some other things, and I was a percussionist, so I appreciate that side of it. But I started off thinking I just couldn't play other instruments, and gee, maybe I'll try percussion. And then I got in there and realized that's no joke either. And every one of these students to get to the level they're at, really the dedication, like you said, the amount of hours you practice and all that, and just the talent is amazing. So congratulations. You should be real proud of yourselves. That's exciting. I don't know if
And-
anybody, yeah, go ahead, Laurel.
I just want to offer my congratulations to you students on Allstate. Many years ago, I traveled on the bus with Mr. Jacques when he was the middle school band teacher with the students that made the middle school Allstate. So I know that making high school Allstate, and especially as a freshman and as a senior, is a huge accomplishment. And you guys are going to have a fantastic time learning from your guest conductor. And I just am looking forward. Is it in Las Vegas this year, or is it up north? The Allstate.
This year, UNR is hosting it up in Reno, so we're local.
Okay, so if you can please share the dates of the performances and the times, that would be helpful information to share with us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the dates of the All-State Conference itself are February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, with the concert itself taking place February 23rd, February 3rd, sorry, multitasking here. And the middle school and high school band concert will take place in Nightingale Concert Hall on Saturday, February 3rd at 9 a.m. And that is up on campus in the Church Fine Arts Building at the university. So if anyone can make it, it's going to be an amazing show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Molly.
Thank you for
Or I'm
sharing
sorry,
that.
Rich, then Molly.
Yes, congratulations. If we could just hear from each of you on, what brought you to want to compete. I mean, a lot of people just do things for the recreational purpose of it, but having the courage to compete at the level in which you did is commendable. And if you wouldn't just mind introducing yourself and why, why did you feel that you wanted to compete?
I'm Drea. I'm a senior. I play clarinet. And I think I'm just a competitive person. And so, I don't know. It's fun.
Just a follow up, do you think you're going to do it secondary, like in college or post high school?
Yeah, I want to continue music throughout college.
I'm Jacob Blanford. I play horn, and one of the main reasons why I decided to go for All-State was because, I just wanted to get the experience with trying out in general. And if I didn't make it, then oh well. There's always next year. But getting that experience of knowing how the audition actually runs, it's really important. And I also did it because my friends encouraged me to do it, so I went for it.
My name's Nate Parsons. I play trumpet. I'm a senior. I think for me, the biggest reason why I wanted to do it is just I met a lot of friends through Allstate, in previous years, and I just really wanted to continue it, see them again, play more music, just have a lot of fun with it.
My name's Tessa, and I'm the percussionist. I think I've always enjoyed doing honor band in middle school and in high school. And this year I felt my most prepared to challenge myself to do All-State. Not only did I really feel prepared, but as I have done the honor bands in the past, I've not only learned musical techniques that have helped improve my musical skills, but also it's given me opportunities to practice, like meeting new people, like Nathan said, and just opportunities to learn more about the community, the state, different people, and what they do, and uh, just an opportunity to engage myself in the community. So I enjoy doing these performances.
Rich?
Yeah, again, just congratulations. And thank you for letting us help celebrate your achievements. I love it. I absolutely love it when I see youngsters. I shouldn't use youngsters, but young men and women come before us with something to celebrate. It just really warms my heart. So thank you for all the efforts you put in. I know it's not easy. My granddaughter tried to play trumpet for 1 year. Didn't go real well. So, but anyway, thank you guys for letting us help you celebrate this.
Anyone else? Lupe?
I also want to congratulate you guys. That's very, very exciting. I do have a question for the seniors. Where are you guys considering going to college?
I am determined to go to the University of Nevada, Reno, and then study either medicine or nursing. So,
I'm kind of up in the air still. I'm between staying in state at either WNC or UNR, or going out of state, and I want to get my MBA.
And congratulations. And please talk to your siblings and your friends about. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
I'm also up in the air like Nathan, and my top choice is UC Berkeley, but we'll see.
Fabulous. What I was going to say, please continue talking to other kids about your guys' success, because you guys are amazing role models for other children in our school, in our community. So congratulations.
Yeah, I think, one of the best things I just heard, Dre, I think you said it was, I enjoy it. And it's one thing to compete, and, some people compete for different reasons, but, if what you're working hard at, you're not having fun with, you wonder if it's worth it. And I'm sure you're all having a good time, and that's what makes it worthwhile. And that's what keeps you sticking to it. I still have lifelong friends from high school that I, was in band with and whatnot. We're still friends. I won't tell you how many years later, but a long time later. So congratulations to all of you. I always put a plug in for scholarships, so don't forget to look at the scholarship opportunities, you seniors, that could be available. And don't be afraid of Berkeley. I'm sure you'll compete just fine. So apply. Anyway, congratulations. Thank you. We're good unless you have anything else to tell us.
Thank you again.
You can go if you want.
All right, congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Jocks, for bringing them all in tonight. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
So I worked out on a percentage basis that I think Carson, and I apologize, Mr. Russell, if this is not good to say, but I think Carson is better than everyone else in terms of the number of kiddos that we have going to all state band versus the other districts. So just had to say that. Yeah. Just two other things. We got if you recall, during the legislative session, there was Senate Bill 231, which brought about an extra funding stream for additional salary payments for staff, and through the amazing work of Mr. Winward without sleep for a couple weeks, and some of his staff were able to get those payments out. So I'm just thankful to Spencer and thankful that we're able to get that out to our staff for to help recognize that the commitment that they put in every single day. Last thing, on Friday, February 2nd, so 2 Fridays from now, State Superintendent Joan Ebert is going to be visiting the district. And we're likely going to schedule some time for board members if you're interested in coming to chat with her, meet, and we'll have a couple others, but just to put that on your calendar, February 2nd, I think it's going to be earlier in the morning, but we have not finalized a time yet. Her schedule has kind of shifted a bit, so I have to still figure some of that out. And that is all I have.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Mike.
So AJ, I'm just wondering, we hear a lot about how much extra work it is implementing that Senate Bill 231 for the extra money for employees. And maybe you could just highlight why that's such a challenge, and hopefully lawmakers will hear that instead of just giving a salary increase to do it the way they did it.
So really what it comes down to is it is a very non-traditional way to pass money to school districts. And I would say maybe due to some, I think what the intention of that money is, and maybe some trust issues with the legislature, they made this really kind of unique way to fund it. If they had just put the money into the traditional funding stream for K-12 education, everything would have been everything would have already happened months ago. Funds would have been out, but there's just some quirks in the way that they tried to direct it that made it especially difficult, I would say. And so it'd be a lot easier if they just funded education into the big pot and then, added another 20 or 30 or 40% on top of that, because all that little bit would help us. I think, and truly, I'm grateful there was an effort to recognize the work across the state in K-12 education, and there's a lot, and it's hard work. But I think there's a bigger picture of what the need is, and so this was a nice, and I'm grateful for the extra funding, but I think by doing it the way they did, it just made it complicated. They should have just put it into the big pot of money, and I think things likely would have ended up about the same way.
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing that up, Mike. It's a lot of work. So, okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 4, board reports and board member comments. This is for information only. Do we have any Carson High or Pioneer representatives here tonight? You're also young looking. I couldn't tell in the crowd, so I wanted to make sure. So, seeing none, we're going to move on to Nevada Association of School Board update. Rich, do we have an update?
Yeah, I have a brief update. The NASB's board president's training is going to be held on February 3rd in Las Vegas. And at this time, 16 out of the 17 districts have committed to send in their board president. And there'll be also direct officers there also. And then they're hoping to have all 17 counties, districts attend. The virtual workshop on the topic of preventing school violence will be held on February 22nd. I believe most people have signed up for that already. If not, see Renee, please. And then the professional development workshop is going to be held in Reno on March 16th. And they're going to have a strategic planning meeting, for lack of a better term, on issues for this next legislative session of how NASB wants to go about that. And I think I mentioned, if I didn't, a virtual workshop on the topic of preventing school violence we held on February 22nd, which I think I just did. And then surveys will be going out soon to all NASB members, asking for your input on the upcoming legislative session. So that's my report for NASB.
Great, thank you. And now we'll go on to, oh, Mike, yeah, please.
So just to add on that March meeting in Reno, one of the things we're trying to coordinate is to set our legislative priorities for the next legislative session. And so I hope to see all of you there because what we're hoping to do is be a little bit more proactive instead of everybody trying to do something to education. We'd like to be more proactive and advocate for what is best for our schools. And so bring your ideas and come to that meeting, please.
And also, I think our public relations, new public relations individuals are going to be there, right, Mike?
Okay, thank you for that. Why don't we do board announcements now? We'll start with Trustee Crossman,
I'll go ahead.
who's way over there.
I know, it's a long ways to wave to you guys. For Fremont Elementary School, Dr. Ward wanted me to announce that they are having a family sock hop on February 2nd from 5 to 6:30 p.m. It'll be costumes and fun. And also she wanted to give an update that they are making some strides in student attendance, but they continue to need more support. They're also really hoping to keep their PTA alive, and they're hoping to have some new fresh volunteers at their PTA. They meet the third Friday of each month at 7:30 in the morning. And they're also looking for some volunteers who are ready to help out with the fun run that will be coming up in May that they do. So that's my report for Fremont Elementary School. And I just wanted to also send a thank you out to Carson City Youth Theater. Last weekend, I had the opportunity to see their production of The Addams Family, and I saw quite a few familiar faces in that production from our school. And I just wanted to thank them for giving such a meaningful extracurricular activity for our students and the youth in this community to participate in, and make the announcement that the shows are continuing through this weekend. So if you've got littles and want to go see a fun production, The Addams Family is very well done, and it's here at the community center. That concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Trustee Varner.
Yes, before I go into the schools, if I could, I'd like to, this microphone here, I'm sorry. I'd like to talk somewhat about the speech and debate tournament that was held this weekend. I had the opportunity to help judge that, along with Superintendent Fueling. Our local assemblyman, P.K. O'Neill, was there, and his wife, Nancy. And I got to tell you, it was very rewarding, but very intense for being a judge. These kids that came and spoke, amazing. I mean, like one I did, they got a copy of a comic strip, and they got 2 minutes to prepare a speech, a 5-minute speech. And I tell you, trying to pick out who did the best was a very, very hard job because they all did excellent. And I think we had some winners from Carson City. I know that one won the humorous award, and I'm not sure exactly who all the others were that won, but it was an amazing experience, and I'm glad I got to do that because sometimes, we hear about all these things that are going wrong in the world, but then you have these kids come before you and do as good as they did, gives you hope for the future of our country. They're excellent, very, very nice. So I'll get my soapbox on that. But for Fritch Elementary, Principal Brown would like to thank the families of the English language students for joining them last Tuesday night for the meeting to discuss upcoming testing and the importance of students attending school each day. They also have their book fair starting next week. It'll run from January 29th through February 2nd. On Wednesday, January 31st, they will host a book fair night from 4 to 7 p.m. So I think all's welcome to come, right, Principal Brown? Thank you. That's my report for Fritz, but I do have one for Boardwalk also. Principal Raqueta would like to thank all of the families who attended their parent data meeting last week. If someone was unable to attend the conference, the information was sent home with your child or will be sent home tomorrow with the report cards. And their next PTO meeting is next Tuesday, January 29th at 6 p.m. and will be held in the library. They will be planning their upcoming dance-a-thon and family dance, and they could really use some help. And I think you're signed up for the dance-a-thon, right, Superintendent Fueling? If not, I will sign you up. So have a good time.
I don't know if it's fair for him to compete. He's at such a high level.
I know. Yeah. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Thanks, Rich. Trustee Walt.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and start with Carson High School. Reminder that tomorrow is a minimum day. After-school tutoring program started on Monday, so that would have been yesterday, yeah? Yesterday, and the tutoring runs from 2:30 to 3:45. So those of you who need it, it's at Carson High School after school. The Winterfest, maybe that's where they're at tonight, is getting ready. So the assembly is Friday during AB 55 for the Winterfest assembly, and Winterfest week starts on Monday. And the Winterfest dance, so there's activities every night. You can go to the website and find out what activities and when. And then the Winterfest dance is on February 3rd at Senator Square at 7 o'clock. And moving on then to Empire Elementary School. So Empire Elementary School states that unfortunately, their chronic absentee rate took a bit of a hit and increased by 15% following winter break. But they are still great things happening at Empire. So one, they would like to give a shout out to Mayor Bagwell and thank her for promoting and encouraging perfect attendance for the remainder of the school year. The efforts are very appreciated. The students are extremely excited to receive the awards from the mayor and the community for perfect attendance. The raffle for the bikes was very popular, and they are very hopeful that this additional incentive will get the students back on track and back into the classroom. The students are working very hard. 24 students earned their next level t-shirt for attending school every day, being on time, staying all day, and supporting a safe, responsible, and respectful school learning environment. This award is a quarterly award and was for the students who met the criteria in second quarter. 25 additional students earned their second next level award, receiving a placard produced by Steve Reynolds at Sign Pro. These 24 students nailed it for the first and second quarters. That's 25 students who have been next level all year. So hopefully they can make it to the third quarter as well. Many thanks to all the students, families, educators, and community members who are supporting the next level effort at Empire. And Mr. Tuttle says, be well, everyone, and make it to school. So that is the ending on that. A report on the, you received the report from Mr. Fueling, but the meeting with the city was, I think, very encouraging for Park Terrace. So, I mean, more details to come after the city, but it's encouraging, so we're very hopeful.
Great. Thank you. Trustee Clapham.
No report for me tonight.
Okay. Trustee Walker. Trustee Ramirez.
Okay, so from Eagle Valley Middle School, from Dr. Conley, he is informing us that they raised $545 with a hat hoodie day for Deputy Lisa Davis, retired air officer and deputy. Deputy Lisa was a yearly figure at Eagle Valley Middle School. She held her DARE classes in the library. Her program was very important to her, and he believes she reached many and made quite an impact. She had a wonderful rapport with the students and many high schoolers who dropped in when they knew that she would be at Eagle Valley Middle School. He was going to share his MAP winter testing growth, but they are still testing some students who were absent, so we will hear about that report at our next meeting. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. And I have a report for Pioneer Academy. 6 announcements from them. First of all, their student spotlight for January falls on Brooklyn Case. They just want everyone to know she's an amazing student with an inspiring story, and you can read about her in Carson now. So congratulations to Brooklyn. Second, the speech and debate team competed at the Carson tournament this last weekend. Maggie Uzel took 5th place in novice impromptu speaking, and they wanted to thank Trustee Varner and Superintendent Fueling for coming to judge. So thank you to you both. The debate team will be selling See's candy to help raise funds for the upcoming tournament in Elko. If you'd like to support the team, check out the link for the virtual store on the school's website. Also, Pioneer Ski Program is starting up at the first trip on January 31. They're going to have picture retakes and makeups this Friday. The first 2 blocks is when they're going to have those. And then last, again, Pioneer Leadership and Speech and Debate students, they're going to be hosting the next Panther Painting Pizza and Punch fundraiser on Tuesday, February 13th. I'm glad I only have to say that one once. That concludes Pioneer's announcements, and I want to thank Pioneer student representative. She usually steals my thunder, and this time I got a little bit. So anyway, thank you. We're going to move on to association reports. Do we have any?
Good evening, Superintendent Fueling, President Casiopo, trustees, and Renee. My name is Loretta Marson. I'm a CESA representative. I'm also a kindergarten parapro at Empire Elementary, and I'm a site rep. And I just have a little statement to read, so here I go. I have attended board meetings in the past, and I will be attending the meetings in the future. I would like to say that CESA and the district have a good relationship that we have bridged over the many years. CESA likes that we have a good communication and there's transparency. CESA now feels that we have come to a bump in the road on some of these concerns. Mr. Fueling meets with CESA every quarter to address and hear our concerns. CESA employees know that we have a shortage of staff, and we will work as a team to help when we can. But like all others who are working a little bit more or harder, it could become a difficult job to do with their job descriptions when more is added to them. We know that job descriptions do change, but there needs to be a balance when new duties are put upon them. The district has added more footage to the sites over the years, but staff wasn't increased. Plus, we have lost custodians over the years due to retirement and resigning. MOUs are needed when it comes to changes in job descriptions or until we can approach negotiations. I know there is so much going on in the district today, but communication is the one main thing that will keep us all going in the right direction. I just want to say thank you for continuing our good relationship. And then if any trustees would ever like to come to our monthly meetings, we hold them on the 3rd Saturday of the month at the Pizza Factory, beginning at 11:30, except for February. And if you'd like to jot this down, here are our meeting dates: February the 10th, March 16th, April 20th, and May 18th. And you can get in touch with me at my school address, lmarson@carson.k12.nv.us. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm back. Any questions?
No, Loretta, I just want to say thank you. I think it's tough. I mean, there's going to be bumps in the road along the way, and even in my day job, I always like to tell people we want to try to keep problems small so we don't have to deal with big problems. So, these are important issues to be talking about. So thank you for bringing them up. And I'll work with Superintendent Fueling. I'll talk to him, and we'll, see what we
Yes.
can do. I mean, it's tough to fill positions. I get that, but also when you can't, it falls on staff, and
Yeah.
I get it. So thanks for bringing that up.
And I did my part. I was custodian. I helped out. And I see a whole different side to working in schools, and I even learned how to polish the gym at Empire. So hey, I got a new job credit to me coming down the pike when I retire.
Sounds like a second career.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, welcome back.
Joe, could you read those dates one more time? I'm sorry.
It is, and again, they're on Saturdays, February 10th, March 16th, April 20th, and May 18th.
At 11?
At 11:30
Yeah.
at Pizza Factory on Highway 50. You're welcome.
Great. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to item 6, public comment. Do we have anybody here that wishes to make public comment? Seeing none, I know we don't have any that were submitted online, so I'm not going to read the public comment paragraph. I don't normally read the whole thing, but we're going to move on then. We'll close public comment. And we'll move to item 7. Discussion and possible action to approve the selection of a Family Life Advisory Committee member to serve a 3-year term, January 2024 to January 2027, in the following category. 1, religious representative. This is for possible action, and we have Sheila Story and Cheryl Macy presenting.
Good evening. Thank you, President Casiopo, members of the board, AJ Fueling, and other people from our district office. We appreciate you all. Tonight, we have 2 great applicants for the position of the religious committee member for the Family Life Advisory Committee. The first one, her name is Megan Bottoms. Megan Bottoms comes with a master's in pastoral counseling and family, marriage and family counseling. So if I'd like to invite her up to the table. The second one is Deborah Johnson. She also comes with experience being a past former Arizona school board member. Both of these individuals have excellent resumes, a lot of community service, and a lot of experience within their local churches, providing different services to all different type of age groups. So I think they're both excellent candidates for this position. So I'll let you ask them a few questions.
So first of all, I just want to say thank you for being interested. I think these are important positions. I know in the past, we've had people that wonder, what are we doing? But these are important, these are important committees to have, and we have a wide representation of people helping us out. And just for the general public's knowledge, this isn't something we just came up with, that we came up with on our own. This is an NRS requirement. NRS 389036 talks about the establishment of a course or unit of course of instruction concerning human immunodeficiency virus, human reproductive system, related communicable diseases, and sexual responsibility, appointment of advisory committee, notice to parents or guardian, consent of parents or guardian required, materials to be made available to parents or guardians of pupils. And it lists in there, I'm not going to read the whole NRS, but if anyone's interested, you can go to the NRS, and it talks about what the composition of the committee is. And over the years, we've had good representation. I think, we've been short sometimes, we've had more people sometimes. And I think anytime you have more people applying to one position, it's great, but at the same time, we wish we could have everybody on the committee, and we just can't. We have to have a certain amount of people, but anybody's allowed to come to the meetings. You're just not, as I understand it, you're just not a voting member. You can participate, you can listen, you can, again, participate, provide some thoughts. So anyway, I just want to thank the both of you for being interested in that. And I think what we'll do, I know you answered some questions when you submitted your interest. And so I think we just wanted to get to know you both just a little bit. And then, of course, we'll vote right in front of you and figure out what we're going to do. And I guess I know you answered this already, and I didn't necessarily see it, but I'd like to just maybe reiterate. Why did you wish to serve on the committee, and what are you hoping to to get out of it and provide to it?
I hope that my answer was good because I don't remember what I said when I typed it out. So I hope that that was good. Really, the reason why when I first saw it advertised in the newspaper, the reason why I was drawn to it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We have to have you state your name first for the record.
Sorry, my name is Megan Bottom, and that's not with an S. I'm not two bottoms, just one. The whole point in applying for this was to really get back into the community and start serving the community in which I was born and raised. And we have recently moved back, and I think this would be an awesome opportunity to serve. I often say to our youth group at the church, this isn't the future of the church. This is our church. And this isn't the future of our community. These kids are our community. And I think that it's a great opportunity for me to serve them.
Thank you very much. And same question? You have to, it should light up green on the bottom.
My name is Deborah Johnson, and I'm the Children's Director at Redemption Church. And the reason why I wanted to be a part of this advisory committee is because I believe in public education. I raised 2 children within the public education system, and they received a high-quality education. And I can't say the word education enough because I believe in it so much, because they are our future. And so I have worked with teachers, with administrative staff, as well as the board, and I know what challenges are out there and what you can say, what you can't say. Sometimes it's different, but at the same time, I want to be able to somehow give back to my community for that quality education that my children receive, that I have seen teachers work so hard and diligent, their dedication, their sacrifices that they make, that they're unsung heroes. And if being on this advisory committee board or committee would help them receive quality curriculum and resources to make their job easier, then I want to be a part of that. I can see the teachers having to learn new curriculum constantly, so they shouldn't have to keep looking over their shoulders thinking, is this right? Is this correct? But if I could be a part of the answer, I want to be a part of it and give back to my community.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to kind of just go down the row, starting with Trustee Crossman. Do you have any questions for the candidates?
I do. I just want to thank you both for applying, and thank you so far for your answers. I'm just wondering, what do you think are your greatest strengths that you can contribute to this committee?
Oh, did I turn it off? Oh, okay. Deborah Johnson. Sorry, I got distracted. Question?
What do you think are your major strengths that you
Oh.
can contribute to the community?
I'm a logical thinker, and so I deal with facts, and I'm currently a paralegal, so, and you're dealing with facts and law. And I believe that that is important for this type of committee, because you can't allow emotions to overrun and historic things run through your head. And I remember how this person felt and how this, we need to stay with the facts. We need to make sure that we're sympathetic to the needs of the community, but at the same time, we need to stick to the facts. And I believe that serving on the committee, you need to be able to be impartial. And so I believe that that's probably one of my strongest strengths, as well as I'm task-orientated, I'm determined, I get things done, and I'm responsible.
My biggest strength is my communication. I'm a trained and clinical counselor, so I know what it is to listen, and I know what it is to be able to communicate my thoughts and what I want to get across. But at the same time, I think that being able to listen to all of the different aspects and being able to determine the best course of action is really where my biggest strength would be.
Thank you. Trustee Varner, any questions?
I think I do, but thank you both for applying. This is one of my least favorite things to do because both of you are very qualified candidates. But some of the material that is provided as support for teachers has been kind of controversial. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at some of that support material that the teachers can use. And if you have, I was just wondering, at what age do you think would be appropriate for some of the material to be presented to the students, reference sex education?
You really put us on the hot seat.
Who wants to go first on that one?
I know. My name is Megan Bottom, and I'll take it. I think that the truth is that our kids are having those conversations younger and younger. And with the introduction of YouTube and iPads and being able to have that kind of access, if we can access them first from an education standpoint, as opposed to getting it into them from a peer or social media or any other kind of standpoint, we win in that. So if you're asking for an age group, I would say like 3rd to 4th grade would probably be best as just the introduction to it.
And Deborah Johnson, I believe that she is correct, that they are being introduced to things early, but is it our job as educators to present that to them at such an early age? So me personally, I feel that probably, depending upon the material, 5th grade and then through high school. And I say depending upon the material because what's appropriate for a high school student may not be well and good for a 5th grader.
Thank you.
Trustee Walt.
Thank you, and thank you for applying. One thing with committees is attendance. It's important to attend because if you cannot get people there, work just doesn't get done, and you keep pushing it forward. What is your time commitment? And I mean, if you were selected tonight, do we have your word that you will attend the meetings?
Megan Bottom, I'm not going to lie, I'm busy. I travel often. I'm a speaker and an author, so I do travel. I'm also on pastoral staff at a church, and I counsel. So I'm busy, but I think that busy people know how to get things done and how to schedule and how to maintain that. If you guys choose me, that is my commitment. I wouldn't have applied if I didn't believe that I could meet the commitment to the committee.
Deborah Johnson, absolutely, I would commit to it. I have the availability to do so, although I am too very busy.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Clapham.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask this question to both of you, obviously, but Deborah, you mentioned a quality curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just off the top of your head, what does a quality curriculum look like to you?
To me, quality curriculum would be accurate. It's not biased. It states the facts, and it doesn't have its own agenda. And of course, it educates our students in whatever area, when we're talking curriculum in general. But whatever area, and in this particular case, it might be sexual education, it might have to be acquired autoimmune disease, whatever the case might be, it needs to be factual and not biased or prejudiced.
I agree with what she said, but I think that the quality of the education is always judged once it's delivered. Are they learning what they're supposed to be learning? Are they receiving what they're supposed to be learning? And that's really where the quality would be judged is after it's delivered, and then being able to make a change from there. If it's not, to be able to discuss why it's not, what's wrong, how better can we do this?
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a couple more, if that's okay. Is that all right?
The floor is yours. You have
Sure,
another question?
Thank you. And then I guess, what is important to you as far as this committee is concerned? Like, what's important? Like, what's important?
Deborah Johnson, get the job done. Seriously. We're here for a job. We're here to do something. And this, I'm sorry, this is the logical thinker's part of me. This is me. I'm a task-oriented person, and I say we get the job done. And whatever we're presented, if we need to review curriculum or so forth, we review it. We don't take our time. We don't say to the other members, oh, well, this is taking a little bit longer than what I anticipated. I need another 3 weeks or let's put it on the next agenda. I just say we have to put our nose to the grindstone and get it done.
So I'm really good at addressing the elephant in the room, and I'm going to address the elephant in the room. As a Christian, we can come with our own agendas, and that's not what my purpose would be. My purpose would be really to feed in what we can do the best for the youth, for the children in this community. I stated it before that I believe this is our community. It's not the future of our community. We have more kids than we have adults in this community, and it's time to do what's right for them. We can complain, we can say that things are wrong, we can do all of that, but unless we're willing to throw in our hat in the ring and say, I'm willing to work to be able to come up with a better or a cohesive solution to the problems, then we really have no room to complain.
One other.
One other.
That's all right. Don't quite know how to end. I guess, like, what do you want to see as, so my family is making the decision, like, do we put our kid in 6th and 7th grade sex ed this year or what? And we're going through that right now. And I guess, what do you see, or what would your aspirations for your encouragement for the community as with parental involvement? What would that look like?
Deborah Johnson. I believe that transparency is key in order to have good relationship, working relationship and communications with the parents. And if they have the opportunity or the encouragement to look at the material ahead of time and ask questions prior to enrolling a student, then I think that would be most beneficial. As currently, like working with the children that I work with every week, there are different personalities and learning styles and developmental, emotional development. And so because of that, what might be good for your child may not be good for this child at this time. So I think too, we need to be sensitive to the parents' thoughts, knowing that they know their child best, but also providing them as much information as possible prior to prior to the children receiving the instruction.
That's a hard decision to make, and I honor you for asking and doing the research and whether or not your kids should do it. So I think that says a lot about who you are as a father, and I think that that's what it takes. We do have the people in the community, I hope the majority, that are willing to have those hard conversations. Is this something that's appropriate for our kids? But I think the parents need to have the materials in order to make that decision as well. The communication with the parents needs to be there, I think, prior to offering any kind of curriculum or discussion, so that way the parents know what are our kids learning. I think that my hope would be that the kids have already had this conversation with their parents and it's not a surprise to them. So that way the door is open.
Thank you. I'm done.
You sure? We got a few minutes. Trustee Walker, just kidding.
That was a record. That was the most I've heard you say.
I know.
You're welcome. So I think Matt led up to my question. And so when I think about this committee, it deals with controversial topics. And we so often hear from advocates for both. We have people that are pushing us to say sex education should be mandatory for every child in the schools. And then we have people who say there should not be sex education in the schools. That's up to the family. And so as you're planning to meet the needs of these kids and provide the factual information that's important to a healthy lifestyle, how do you balance that controversy or those opposing views in a way to meet the needs of the community?
Deborah Johnson. Question first. And when you say meeting the needs, when you have one parent that says absolutely no sex ed, and then you have another one that says, well, yes, I'm for it, how can you meet this need? Because it's state mandated.
Well, I think that's the question,
Okay.
because they're advocating for that not to be a state mandate.
Okay.
And so where in your view does that balance come down? You know what I mean? Like, how would you respond to, you have a concerned parent show up to one of your meetings and they're saying, you guys are doing the wrong thing. This should not be in our schools. What would you say to that parent?
I think it really goes back to compassion and understanding where that parent is coming from. If they truly feel that if it's not appropriate for what's in the schools, I would ask a lot of questions. What have you done to lead up to this that you've done with your children so that they don't need this education? Are you aware of what's being discussed with your children, not just from the teachers, but also from the peers that they're exposed to every day? I would just ask a ton of questions to be able to understand where that's coming from and what they're looking for. Of course, a good balance isn't, because how do you meet that need when it's state mandated? If that state mandate is changed, can we give the parents more curriculum to give them the voice with their kids and the words and the appropriateness and how to discuss that with an age level? That would be a way to meet that. But with it being a state mandate, there's no way to say we can't teach your child this.
Deborah Johnson. Also, too, I believe that we would need to be, again, sensitive, as Megan shared, being sensitive to their needs, but at the same time, we don't want them to feel that because it is a state mandate, we're not going to listen to them. So it is important to let them know that I understand where you're coming from, or maybe if you don't, you could say, I'm not quite sure, maybe you need to put that in writing, so you could share it with the rest of your advisory committee, or just, thank you, I'll take, your comment under consideration.
And I guess just to follow up to that, so how comfortable are you having those difficult conversations with somebody who might disagree with what the committee is doing, whatever their leanings are?
I'm a pastor and a counselor, so I understand what it is to have difficult conversations. Everybody thinks that they can do your job differently or better or whatever, and that you're doing it wrong, and really what it comes down to is just understanding where their heart is. Most of the time, if you can come to a common ground, you can kind of resolve through that, and just really listening, being heard goes a long way. So many people aren't heard, and just knowing that they're heard. I understand what you're saying. This is what you're saying, and just knowing that they're heard, even if there's nothing that you can do about it or nothing that you can change necessarily in that moment, just listening and understanding goes a long way.
I hate to say it, but I totally agree with her.
It's okay to agree. Cheryl.
Cheryl Macy, for the record, I just wanted to clarify that the Family Life Unit is an opt-in unit by state law,
Right.
and so no family is required to participate in that. You can choose to
Well,
opt
that
out.
changes my whole answer. Knowing that, I really believe that then you really have to communicate with the parents. If you can give them as much material and help and guidance as they can if they opt out of the program. So that way their kids aren't hearing it again. I keep going back to this. They're going to see it on social media. They're going to see it on YouTube. They're going to hear it on the playground. Give the parents a voice to be able to counteract that and educate from an education standpoint.
To clarify, that's why I asked that question, because as a school board member, that is one of the things that people talk to you about, because they do want that changed. And there are people that want it abolished, and there's people that want it to be mandatory for every child, where right now it's an opt-in program. But we're still dealing every year with at least one person saying one of the two views. And so that's why I was just kind of, it's a popular hot button issue. And so, that's why I'm asking that question.
Trustee Ramirez.
So, as you may know, we have a very large percentage of Latino families in our community, in our district. How would you welcome parents that are feeling very shy, for lack of a better word, to discuss these topics that are addressed in the committee?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that first word. A very large percentage of what?
Of Latinos.
Latinos in
Latino
your
families
community.
in our district.
And how would we feel if?
How would you talk to those parents about these sensitive, subjects that are addressed in this committee, being that they're very, again, I'm using the word shy for lack of a better word, about the subject matter? Embarrassed, thank you.
Modest.
Yes,
Yes, modest. I think that really you have to be sensitive and you have to know who you're talking to. Again, I hate to keep repeating myself, but understanding where they're coming from and listening to them, hearing the words that they're not necessarily able to say, but watching their body language, and this word is kind of making them uncomfortable, and being able to kind of change the atmosphere a little bit to, move on from that point. And if they can just be heard and met where they're at, I think that really would help the whole situation. I'm sorry, Deborah, I jumped on you.
No, I don't think there's a routine. Deborah Johnson. I believe that when you're listening to them, and not just the Latinos, anybody, but as you're listening to them, and if you do see that there is a particular word that is uncomfortable, you might change it to something that's not as maybe direct, and yet at the same time still be able to communicate, because sometimes a person has a word in their head or a thought in their head and they can't get it out, and they're only thinking one thing. But if you're able to kind of address it, but say, wait a minute, this is what I'm trying to say, and then as you explain it to them in a different manner, sometimes that helps the walls come down. Also, too, we have to be careful not to use sometimes large words or words that make us look important or feel important, because it's not about us. At this point in time, when you're having that conversation with that person is important at that moment. It's not about you, it's about them. So you want to, if you have to change your demeanor, how you feel. I hate to say this, but maybe even at an advisory committee meeting, maybe even how you dress might be, if you have parents that are willing to come out and to come to the meeting, and your appearance, could be a standoff. So you just kind of want to read your audience in that fashion too.
Okay, we have beat you up pretty good. And you held up to the challenge, so that's fantastic. I might have run away by now. No, again, we appreciate this. Thanks for taking our questions, because it is an important position. And we've learned over the last few years, certainly, 2-3 years ago, how vocal and how passionate some people can be. And everybody's here looking out for what they feel is the best interest of their kids. And I think our staff is doing the same thing. They're looking out for the best interest of their students. And, sometimes you come at it from different ways. You're trying to get to the same place, but you come at it from different ways. So I appreciate each of your thoughts and answers on this. So with that, I don't want to belabor this anymore. We need to pick a person and go from there. And I think maybe what we'll do, does anybody want to? I think we've done it in the past where we've kind of gone down the row, and maybe that's the best way to do it, is we just, and then we can make a motion based on who gets the most votes. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, I think last time we made a motion, and if it wasn't seconded, then we knew it didn't go, but however, yeah.
President Casiopo, I think if what you're asking is if you can take the board's temperature and see where the votes are going, then take a motion, you can certainly do that. Or if you want to just take a motion, see if it gets a second, get the public comment and bring it back. If it passes,
either way,
it passes. It fails, you take another motion.
Okay.
President Casiopo, may I say something real
Oh,
quick?
yes, please.
First, I'd like to thank both candidates for coming and bringing us their applications, their resumes, their letters of interest. I think they're both great candidates. And I just always want to express to them that if you don't get the position, we always, always welcome you to all the meetings. We love to hear your voice. We love to hear your comments. And please come and be part of our committee. I would greatly appreciate it. And I would extend the invite to all of our board members to come and see a meeting and how it's being conducted, see the resources that we're reviewing and possibly approving for our toolbox, if I could say that, toolbox for our teachers to utilize within their classrooms. So please, you're welcome to always come, and along with the two candidates that we have before us this evening. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. So I think what I'm going to do is bring it back to the board. If somebody would like to make a motion, we'll go from there. If not, then we'll work down the board.
Mr. President, I would suggest that we give everybody a chance to state their preference. Sometimes it's hard to do that if you jump right to a motion.
Yeah.
And there might be more of a discussion if we kind of get the temperature that way.
And I'm fine with that. I was leaning towards that way in the first place, so let's do that. So Trustee Crossman, we're going to start with you.
That's what happens when you get this seat after a while. I do want to thank both of you for applying, and I appreciate your preparedness and your interest, and I think either of you would be excellent. At this time, I'm leaning towards Megan Bottom. I think that the counseling aspect and considering the mental health crisis that we do know our students are facing, I think that is an important additional aspect. I don't want either of you to forget. I know it's that the decision makes it, but this voting position is a religious leader, so don't leave that perspective. I think that the intent of having someone with a religious background to serve on this committee is to bring that perspective in. So I don't want anyone to totally leave that at the door, because that's why this position is here. But that's where I'm leaning at this time, is because of that extra insight.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Varner.
And before I forget, I'd like to thank Cheryl Macy and Sheila Story for all the work you do on the Family Life Committee. Last time you guys were here, I wanted to thank you guys and didn't remember. It's a tough choice. Both of you gave very good answers. This time I'd be leaning towards Megan Bottom.
Trustee Walt.
Yes, thank you. And thank you both for applying. And as Ms. Story said, whoever doesn't get the position, please feel free to attend as well as a committee to give your insights as well. This is always a difficult thing, especially to do it in a public forum as well. But yes, I'm going to lean towards Megan Bottom as well. The communication, when you're key on, communication and your skills on communicating, the listening aspect is what kind of steered me as well. So if you are put into this position, I would hope that you do as you say, and as you answered as well, is listening is extremely important, and being able to communicate that as well.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Clapham.
Thank you. So I do appreciate both of you. Thank you for letting me ask you those questions. And I'm going to be leaning or recommending Deborah Johnson tonight. And so that's where I stand.
Okay. Trustee Walker.
I think you both answered well and would be great representatives, and listening to both your credentials. And I think Deborah's background with being on a school board and that level of community involvement might serve the committee well. And so for that reason, I'm going to lean towards Deborah Johnson.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Ramirez.
So I too want to thank you both for coming and for your strong interest in helping our district with this very important work. I really appreciated both of your answers. I felt that they were very genuine answers, and so thank you. My vote is going to go for Megan Bottom.
I'm sorry.
Megan Bottom.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just add, you've gotten plenty of thanks and well-deserved. You could tell this is a tough decision for us because you both would do a great job on the committee. I liked all your answers for the same reasons, and I liked some of your answers for different reasons. And given that, I'm going to throw my vote in for Deborah Johnson. I think both would be great candidates. I think Deborah would if there was something she was concerned about or needed to ask more, I have no doubt that she would dig to the bottom of it. And that's a hard thing to do. So really, that was the only distinction I had. I think you're both fantastic. So with that, we have 7 votes. We have 4 for Ms. Bottom, 4 for Ms. Johnson, or 3 for Ms. Johnson.
And
That gets
just for clarity, Mr. President, I don't mean to interrupt, but no votes yet, just
no votes yet.
voices of
Just,
support.
yeah, just summarizing where we're at, but I wanted the board to know that's kind of where everybody's leaning. And with that, I would ask if one of the board members wants to make a motion.
Sure. I move that the Carson City School Board trustees approve Megan Bottom as the religious representative to serve on the Carson City School District Family Life Advisory Committee for a 3-year term, January 2024 to January 2027.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further board discussion? Seeing none, any public comment on this? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, congratulations to Ms. Bottom. Almost threw an S in there. Again, thank you both, and Ms. Johnson, I hope, this doesn't discourage you from being involved if you wish to. We would love to, to have you, join, visit and join some of these committee meetings. So thank you very much. And again, Cheryl, and I want to thank the both of you, Sheila and Cheryl, for all you do. We really can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on to item 8, informational update on the Carson City School District Communication Plan. This is for discussion only, and Dan Davis is presenting.
Good evening, President Casiopo, members of the board. I'm happy to be here. My name's Dan Davis. I'm the Public Information Officer with the Carson City School District. And tonight I'd like to just review with you some celebrations as well as kind of future strategies that we've got in place for the district in terms of communication and all of that. So I know I somewhat inundated you with a lengthy document, but there's a reason for that. It really has to be kind of drawn out somewhat as in terms of where we're at, where we're going, where we'd like to be, and then also that element of measurability. That's the complicated aspect with communications and public relations. It's often very difficult to quantify. It's not like we've sold this many things or we've graduated this many students. It's a lot more subjective. So I've done my best to put as many necessary tools and applications into place to really kind of show some progress and kind of benchmarks of where we're headed. That being said, the document before you is the communications plan. This is an ongoing document, an ongoing strategic plan. To give you some history, my background is in public relations. That's my primary focus. When I was hired at the district, this was a brand new position. There had not been any previous individual in this capacity. And so essentially I served as coming in as an outside consultant. And I was able to kind of, and to be honest, this is really a PR person's dream, is to be able to come in and create a plan and basically execute all of those recommendations. And so it's been probably the most exciting and rewarding part of my career thus far. So in 2017, I joined the team. 2018, we implemented this plan. This plan has been updated year to year, and various aspects have either gone by the wayside or we've added new strategies or tactics, new aspects. I'll also note too, in 2018, when this plan was first instituted, it was an award-winning plan through the Public Relations Society of America. We received some accolades in that regard, and hence we're at where we're at. I guess I'll just go ahead and start with probably page 4, and certainly feel free to interject. I want to make this as informative as possible. If you have questions or if there's anything that, feel free to interrupt me. Although I do want to keep this as brief as possible. I know there's plenty of other work to be done tonight, but again, it's also something that I'm proud of and I'm excited to share with you. I want to start on page 4, the communication mission. The Carson City School District Communication Department and the Public Information Officer exists to manage communication for the district and the Board of Trustees with their respective and internal, external audiences. Our mission is to establish positive relationships and credibility between the district and its audiences through a timely and accurate dissemination of information. That's really kind of what I do, is I'm actively reaching out for those proactive and reactive announcements and any news situations. So page 5, this is really kind of the meat of the plan. This is the plan in general. There's plenty of background information that I'm sure you're all familiar with. But in the introduction, we talk about how this aligns with a strategic plan, the superintendents and efforts in that regard for the overall district-wide strategic plan is fantastic. It's very organized in strategic aspect, which follows very closely with communication planning as well. So I find that really unique in that regard. It's also meeting the communications accepted practice, the policies, 901 for public relations, policy and regulation 265 for social media applications, and policy 904 for school visitors. I mention that because in my capacity, I bring a number of individuals from the news media, reporters, photographers, and such, and they all have an opportunity to check in as a regular visitor at our school sites. Page 6, I want to talk a little bit about research because I come from the private sector. I've served as a public relations information officer, PIO, in multiple capacities for both nonprofit and for-profit private industries. One thing that's very beneficial in working in education is the support to collect data and research. And a lot of private sectors, you got a lot of CEOs that are like, I know what we need to do, this is what we're going to do. So they don't take a lot of time to do the research, collect the data, make an assessment, and go from there. So I appreciate that from the education perspective, and our superintendent and the folks that are on our team here. Part of what I pulled together for research is from the JAC survey from 2023. From that, we had more than 443 responses, which is a really good response rate. That's more than 50%. Very few surveys that are offered do you get that high of a response rate. Some key findings there. Nearly 98% of all teachers and employees surveyed believe that what they are doing is important. I think that is a key indicator that people are happy. They believe that they have a purpose. They believe that they have opportunities to work with a team to achieve goals. They believe that they contribute to decision-making in their role. More than 88% believe that they work in an atmosphere where where there is mutual respect among staff. We're not like a toxic work environment. That's helpful. Moving on, some additional findings and benchmarks. So prior to my arrival in February 2017, there were no previous benchmarks or measures in place to track or evaluate communications efforts. Since then, I've instituted this plan. I've been able to track more and more. These bullet points here, we can kind of delve into a little bit more. For example, in 2018, we pushed out about 87 news releases or photo submissions, media advisories, or statements. And just to kind of educate each of you, it's not just a press release. There's actually different degrees in terms of what the effort is. There's a news release because it's sent to both print and broadcast. So that's one aspect. There's also photo submissions. So that's kind of like what I sent out today where we've got photos and it's like, here, take these, run with it. There's also media advisories where you invite photographers and reporters to a special event. It's kind of like an invitation for them to come get photos and write their own story. And then, of course, there's statements that we provide where it's just kind of one-sided. So that's just a brief education of what communication forms there are. So in 2018, we put out 87. This last year, we did double that. 212 total releases were sent out, or announcements. From that, if you look at, I've got a tracking mechanism that tracks, and I can explain this a little bit further, but for 2018, we had a total of 619 total news stories, and that's appearances that reference the district in general by name, whether it be for positive or negative or neutral type stories. That's the total amount that I was able to track given my ability. For 2023, there were 726 total news stories. I track that as far as, like I said, positive, neutral, or negative stories. So if it's a story about Drea, who was here tonight, she was a clarinetist. She performed in Carnegie Hall, New York. That was a story that we did last year. Positive, excellent story. That would mark that box. For a negative, well, actually, I should say neutral. Neutral stories are kind of more where it's not necessarily good or bad. It's kind of, it is what it is type story. A negative story could be something related to the safety or concern of a school. So stories about a student with a gun at school, that would be considered a negative story. Stories about fights or different activities that aren't promising would be considered. And I'm happy to say that more than 99% of all stories about the district are positive or neutral. There's very few negative stories, which is a win for me. Knock on wood, knock on wood, knock on wood. An additional measure that we've been looking at is,
I'm thinking,
yeah,
a lot of that is, I think, probably part of your leadership, because you do make sure that, great things are happening in the school district, from how hard our staff work to the amazing things that our students are doing, and you make sure the community knows the good things that are happening. And so it's easy for the community to recognize the great work that is taking place in our schools, and that's thanks to you getting that information out there.
I appreciate that, Trustee Walker. I have these conversations with a lot of news editors. In fact, when I was working at Renown Health, we had like 3 or 4 really negative stories that impacted the community. We had a train wreck that had a number of casualties. We had a shooting at the Nugget. There was the Air Races plane crash. It was really heavy news market, and it impacted the community. Like, people were kind of dragging their feet, feeling down. I had reporters and editors contact me like, hey, do you have any good news? Because what happens is when everything is contagious, if you have this positive element that you're stirring up in your community, that inspires others to kind of up their game. Simultaneously or similarly, like, if you have this negative tone, that's going to also impact people in that respect. So certainly the way that we are projecting the you know, that's, what's the term I heard the other night? The average man or woman inspires nobody. You know, like that's true. Like if you're not doing great things, or if you're not trying to better yourself, or you're not trying to better your position as a teacher or as a coach or as an employee, you're not inspiring anybody. But if you are, and it's being shared, people are going to take notice of that, and that's going to inspire them to do similar. So, sorry, I was a little on my soapbox there. But that's kind of what I live day to day. I'd like to get a little bit more in depth, and maybe now's a good a time as any. If you could kind of turn to some of the supporting documents that I provided. There's two reports that I want to reference here. So this is the media relations report from 2018. So if you look at this is a spreadsheet that I keep with all the news stories going through January through December. It kind of tallies things up. And this report is generated from advertising equivalency. So to kind of give you a background here, so if you look at page 1, which is probably the only page that you have, January 16th, Channel 2 did a story about campaign for better attendance. That was equivalent. So if we were to take out an ad for the amount of minutes that aired on Channel 2, it would be valued about, this is inflated, $2,400. That's a multiplier. An ad equivalence is multiplied out by 3 times. The reason we do an advertising equivalent multiplier is because if I were to take the ad out, I could make it say whatever I wanted it to say. And that's kind of biased. That's biased advertising, because I'm paying for the ad. I want it to say blah, blah, blah. The difference between advertising and public relations is you have a third party that makes it non-biased. So you've got a reporter or somebody who kind of steps in and is like, okay, we can't lean one way, this way, or that way. We have to be kind of down the middle. So it adds credibility. So we add a multiplier of 3 for that. So if you look at this list here, they're all tallied up. So the total earned media was $377,000 in 2018. For 2023, you can see that the number is not super significantly greater, and the total stories was not super significantly greater. So the reason I want to call this out is we did a total 82 releases or announcements in 2018. 2023, we did 216 or 219. What I'm trying to say here is oftentimes more content doesn't generate more space in the news, because reporters for the newspaper, TV editors, they only have a certain number of minutes, they only have a certain number of pages that they can put stories on. There are a few other publications where they have unlimited resources. They'll run everything that you send them because, like we mentioned before, any good content is beneficial to the community. So that is just kind of what I try and tell her. Last year, I kind of felt, and I told AJ this, I felt like I was drinking from a fire hose, because when I first started, people didn't really know who I was, what my role was. But within the last couple of years, everyone's like, oh, we got to send this to Dan. We got to get this in the newspaper. We got to, And so I was almost inundated with positive stories, which is great. I love content. We put out plenty of content. The problem with it is if it's not vetted or kind of organized. Say, for example, I've got 4 or 5 news stories one week, and the newspaper only has room for 3. One of those stories is going to cannibalize the other. And so if you don't kind of strategize and kind of position, okay, we're going to kind of make an editorial calendar. We're going to schedule this one for the next week. We're going to do this one this week, and kind of spread them out, then they'll kind of eat each other up. So that's some basic background on at least my strategy. And to be frank, I pulled a lot of that from just my conversations that I've had with TV editors and news editors. It's been funny because I've had conversations with them, and they've kind of joked like, man, the news coming out of Carson City is incredible. Like, how many times has the district been on Channel 2 or Channel 8? Like, and we've got such a small population. We're what, 49,000. Washoe County's at 400,000. Like, why are they not getting more stories for their respective audience? And it's I like to say, well, it's because I'm doing my job, you know, but in reality, what's happening is I believe that some of the districts are inundating the stations with too many stories, and they get to a point where they're like, which one do you want us to run? Which one do you want us to cut? And I think we've kind of figured out the formula of what is best meeting the needs of those news markets and what their needs are, and not inundating them with too much information. And so I think that's kind of a testament to what this plan is doing. Kind of moving on, some other additional findings and benchmarks. Social media followers. This is something that's very subjective. There's all sorts of analytics that you can go through for social media. There's an algorithm that kind of comes into play, and I've done a number of courses on social media. I've had social media training. Kind of what I've learned is you want to have a presence there because you want to have that two-way communication. It's a very easy opportunity for our parents and teachers to engage with what we're doing as far as a district. It also has some downfalls. There's a lot of desktop courage that comes into play when people are behind the computer screen. They're not face-to-face with somebody. And I always encourage parents and families to have a conversation with the district, you know, representative for that school side, whether it be the principal or whomever. Those are the best ways to reach conclusions or draw answers. But it is important to have a presence on social media, and I think it's an extensive tool, like an immediate tool that we can apply. But in terms of quantifying, it's very difficult. So really all I've done since 2017 is just kind of mark a tracker for the total number of followers. So in 2018, that's when I really first started to track it. We had 5,265 followers on all of our social media platforms. As of December 2023, we're at about 19,485. So that's nearly a 300% increase in followers that we're tracking. So that includes, and this is also one of the support materials I provided in terms of what platforms we're on: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And if you'll notice, we introduced a number of new Instagram accounts. A lot of them I don't have personal control over. They're being managed by individuals or teachers at the high school or various clubs that the schools offer. So, but it is part of our reach, if you will, for those platforms. All right, so that's page 6. I want to talk briefly about page 7. So this kind of outlines the overall communication goal. Now, the overall goal is different from the communication mission, which is on, I believe, this page 5, or I'm sorry, page 4. A goal is supported and achieved through kind of the following objectives, strategies, and tactics. So that's kind of where we have these metrics in place. So our goal for communication is to position the Carson City School District as a subject matter expert and leader for education efforts in Nevada by effectively communicating as much accurate information as quickly and to as many people as possible, while also highlighting the positive and possibly untold successes of our students, teachers, and employees. So we're trying to provide as much accurate information to as many people as possible, and as quickly as we can. That's our main goal. The objectives that follow kind of detail how we're going to do that. So I don't have to get into the weeds with all this. I mean, it kind of is self-explanatory. But I will say that a lot of these are measurable strategies and tactics, so there is accountability for those, and that's kind of what we're trying to go at. Kind of what I've learned just in reviewing year to year, we don't want to put out more than 150 news releases or announcements annually, because I think it's not worth the extra effort for the return on investment, and that's kind of my goal. And ultimately, my goal is to generate $500,000 in total earned media. And that seems lofty. I know it's a lofty goal, but I know it's achievable because we've done it. We did it last year. And just to kind of share with you briefly, from my profession, where I've kept similar tracking mechanisms like this, where I was I was in a department of more than just one person, which I'm in a department of one right now. And we were highly celebrated for achieving $500,000 in generated earned media. And so that was a huge accomplishment for a department. And I think we are exceeding in that respect. Granted, we have the best client in the world. We have the Carson City School District. We have amazing kids that are doing amazing things. So it's a real easy sell for me to call a news reporter and say, I've got a great story for you. So that being said, I give credit to our students and teachers for the great work that they're doing. I think that's, well, just to kind of highlight some of these things here. Just ongoing communications efforts, you're pretty well aware of these. One that I'll point out is media relations. That's a primary function that I have. It's a threefold mission that I have, if you will. It's to publicize the positive news that we have in the district. It's to serve as a spokesperson or a liaison between schools, the district, and the media. And thirdly, I need to manage an approachable and responsive relationship with the media. And that's usually a lot of the criticism I hear from news editors talking about various public information officers, like, they won't call me back. Or I sent them an email and they're ghosting me. And I think that is what makes it effective, is if you can have, and that's what shows that we're transparent too. Like, we're not dodgy. We're not gonna dupe you or crickets. That's what I think that's what builds credibility. So that's media relations. Most of this other stuff I think you're pretty familiar with. Let me just see if I had any other notes here, and we can call it good. I think that is, I will, I guess, close and then open for questions, but I am, like I said before, this position has been kind of like a dream job for a communications professional, of someone in my capacity, to be able to come in as an outside consultant, to be able to institute, this is what I would recommend you do, and then to be able to execute those recommendations. It's been really kind of a dream come true in that respect. And I know that doesn't happen a lot of times. Most positions are established positions where this is the way we've always done it, and you kind of get in this pigeonhole of, this is the way we do it, and we're not going to change it. And I think that's what the beauty of this plan is. If something needs to be adjusted, we can make those adjustments and go from there.
Yeah, so Dan, I just want to, first of all, thank you. A nice comprehensive plan. I think it's got a lot of good information in there. And really, I appreciate everything you've done. I mean, we talked about your position before it was a position here in the district for years and the need for it. And it was refreshing that we finally were able to do that and bring you on board. And I think you've, in a positive way, run with it. And thank you for everything you've done. And I agree with you. There's always, no matter how good you're doing, there's always room for improvement. And I have no, thoughts on how we're making improvements, but I like the fact that you're thinking about that and being open to those possibilities where they might exist. I've got a couple of thoughts, but before I do, I thought I would just see if anybody from the board has any questions for you. Rich, why don't you start, and then Molly.
Yeah, Dan, thank you. What I like is almost every day I'm able to read a story about some student who has done something out of the ordinary, something amazing. And I think that just shows that they are getting a good education. We have a lot of excellent, good students here. And I just truly appreciate your efforts in highlighting them. One thing that I've always thought would be interesting, because we do have some people who think that Carson City School District doesn't provide a good education. But I know better, because there's students who have graduated before, who've become physician assistants, who's become doctors, attorneys. And if there's just some way of highlighting some of their accomplishments, to say this is a Carson City graduate, and now he's a doctor, dentist, veterinarian, whatever. But I know that'd be hard to do. But thank you for highlighting the kids that we do have in school and their accomplishments.
Trustee Varner, if you're nominating anybody, I can think of a few, even in this room, that if we want to do a special feature on it, we could certainly do that, so.
Yes? No, but I was ready to go, sorry. I didn't know that was a literal question.
We can take this to a discussion.
I like the idea, and I think that's a good idea, is, kind of on occasion, kind of a where are they now piece.
Mhm.
So anyway, Molly.
No, thank you for this. This was extremely comprehensive. I read it all, and and I really appreciate the work that you put into having this in our packet. The more information I get in the packet, the more I appreciate it. I really do. So thank you so much. I do. The social media, I think, is phenomenal, and you're doing a great job. I saw the numbers, and you're right. Some of the numbers have increased by 300%, of your followers, and I think that is a testament to the work that you're putting into it. So kudos to you. The one thing that so does the Carson City School District, have you on social media joined different groups and communities?
We do follow a number of different groups and community pages on social media, and that's part of the tediness of managing social media pages is just interaction. And so, for example, we follow the greenhouse. I can't even think of the greenhouse project, or the Carson City Arts, or Carson City government pages. They all post things, and a lot of times if we're commenting as the Carson City School District, or if we're liking different posts that they have, that increases our page views, it increases our ability on the algorithm for other people to see our page and get our information. So it is a tedious thing, but we are actively practicing that, so.
Because where I was going with this is for teacher recruitment. When you're out, senior in college or whatever, and you're looking for a position, they're on social media, and they're going to these businesses, the school district's websites, looking to see, where do I want to work? And I'm not sure that if you join some of the different groups and whatever, and I don't know if it's appropriate, that you could tag them on some of the posts that bring those people then to our page, because it is a lot of positive posts and everything that, that is doing good. And I don't know if that would help at all with.
That is a common
recruiting.
practice, and we do that as frequently as we
Okay.
can and where it's appropriate. So if we have an art student that has won or is hosting an art showcase or something, we'll tag different aspects of the community just so that will increase the viewership of that particular post. So.
Okay. And if somebody wanted, to give you information or thought it was a relevant post or something like that, how would they contact you?
And this is again kind of my demise, but I try and make myself as visible and available as possible. So whether it's a teacher, a community member, a principal, whomever that has a good idea or like, hey, this should be promoted, they're welcome to email me. Any member of the community is welcome to contact me. That's kind of when I worked in healthcare, I served in an on-call capacity, and what that means is any given moment you could get a call from a news media asking from patient updates to a crisis or an emergency that's taking place. And so I'm still kind of living in that on-call capacity in my position here, whether it be a snow day that we're going to communicate out, or a student or somebody had an accident or something like that. There's a number of aspects where I'm always available by cell phone. So, but a caveat to that, there has to be a reasonable time, and if it's something, we want to be strategic in the delivery of that information, so we're not just blasting everything out. Like, for example, if we post more than, I try not to make it a habit to post more than once a day, because if you do multiple posts, you lose followers because they're spamming me. I'm getting too much information. So it's kind of a balance that we're trying to make too, where I have to kind of filter out what's kind of newsworthy and what's effective, what's in line with what we're trying to do with the district in that regard. So it's kind of a balance that we're trying to do.
Any other questions for Dan?
Just a comment. I was just gonna echo what you say about the positive stories, because we've known for years that good things have been happening in the schools, and I'm so grateful that the community is seeing that. And then just my favorite story last year was the goose that took up a nest under the playground at Fritch Elementary School, and just how cute that was with the mother goose stories. So I'm wondering if the goose comes back. So
We'll find out, I'm sure. Just to kind of answer that, there are occasions where some of these things aren't pitched to me. Like they're just ideas that I overhear in conversations and principals meeting, and that's kind of where the news savviness that kind of I've worked on throughout the years, like that would make a good news story or not. That's kind of built into my framework somewhat. But going back to these positive news stories about our students, we've had so many presentations here at this board on social emotional status of our students, and to kind of benefit them in that regard, anytime a teacher or principal or somebody, another student says something nice about someone, it changes them for the better. And it's no different for news media. I mean, how many kids are like, oh, the TV's here, I want to be on, like they want that attention, and it's warranted. Everybody is warranted. And I wish I could feature everybody because of the emotional benefit that it provides for them. And unfortunately, with the total number of students that we have, I can't do that. But hopefully we're able to get as many as we can, especially those that need it the most. So.
Well, good. Dan, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And again, thanks for all your efforts. I think you're doing really an amazing job, and we're lucky to have you. So thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move on to item 9, discussion and possible action to approve the proposed Carson City School District academic calendar for the 2024-2025 school year. This is for possible action. We have Tasha Fuson presenting.
Thank you, President Cassiopo. As you stated, Tasha Fuson for the record. So it's that time of the year where we get to set our calendar for the following school year. Before I go over what you have in your packet for proposals, I want you to know the process actually starts in October. So I have Miss Renee come up with a mock calendar that would match last year's. We start with that. Take a look at the data from last year to say, okay, were our minimum days, for instance, problems for attendance, student attendance, teacher attendance? Do we have issues on those days? I can tell you that no, our minimum day Wednesdays last year and into this year, we have as good as attendance on those days as we do on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Mondays and Fridays continue to be our low attendance days from students, the highest missed days from students and from staff. So I looked at that. Then I bring it to our principals meeting. I ask them to take it back to their site teams, to review it at their site teams, to give me feedback. I gather that feedback, make some little nuanced shifts. In this particular year, it was that I was asked by our secondary schools, instead of having the third and fourth Wednesdays be the minimum days, to separate them out to second and fourth, to give them a little bit more time between the days, to give teachers time to go back and do what they were taught. For instance, if they were taught a strategy, or if they reviewed a strategy on the second one, to go back, try it in the classroom, come back with data on the fourth one. So that was a request, so I made that change. Then I send it out to the association presidents, ask them to meet with their groups, to give me feedback from their respective groups. Then I take that back to decide whether or not we need to make any shifts to the calendar based on that, then bring it back to the principals groups again, tell them to bring it back to their sites again, say here's where we're at now, and then it comes back to me, and then I send it out to our community partners and say, hey, do you have any final words or input that you want me to consider before this goes to the board? So it's quite a process. There's a lot of input. I just want you to know that it's not me sitting in my office saying, hey, what looks like it would be fun for us to do next year, right? There's a lot of input. So this is what we've come up with for this year. Again, the importance of really getting this out in January is to make sure that everybody has time to plan for the following year, for daycare, travel, for events like graduation, that kind of thing. So we try to get it out, as you all know, in January. So in looking at the calendar, our proposed start date for next school year will be August 19th. That is the third Monday in August. That is our typical. We typically start on the third Monday. This year, because of the way the dates fell, we started on the second Monday to try to put more days in first semester to allow our secondary schools to finish first semester before winter break. That's one of the priorities for secondary schools. This is going to make it, we do have enough seat time to do so, but it does make our second semester 16 days longer than our first semester. But there is so much testing in the second semester that our secondary schools said that's fine. Actually works out well for us because there's a lot of testing. We miss a lot of in-class instructional time second semester. So there was not a concern on behalf of the schools about those imbalanced semesters. Our elementary schools would end their semester after we get back from winter break. So that's what we're proposing to start. It would have been nice to start on the 12th because that's when Washoe and Clark are starting, but I will tell you the feedback we got from all of our teams is starting the second Monday of August was way too early. No one liked that. I heard a lot of feedback about how much people didn't like that. So going back to the third Monday, I'm hoping I get less feedback from how much people don't like it. But just know that Lyon County, they start after Labor Day. So that's the only other piece that I've heard from some folks in our community is, wouldn't it be nice? Because when I was a kid, we started after Labor Day. I understand that, but with the other two larger districts, surrounding districts starting on the 12th, so they start a week before us, I think it's a good, happy in between, and also goes back to what our traditional start date has been. Douglas has not posted their calendar, so as we go through this, I cannot give you really any feedback about what Douglas has chosen to do because they haven't approved it for next year yet. So again, Washoe and Clark would start the week before us. We would start on the 19th, and Lyon starts September 3rd. Our fall break, as you guys know, we started, gosh, I think it's been 3 years ago now, giving our students and staff the week of Thanksgiving off. We call that our fall break. All the other districts only give Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off, but that decision was made based on the fact that our attendance for Monday and Tuesday on that Thanksgiving week was really poor for students and staff. So if they are not, if they were not productive days anyways, we decided that it would be better for our community, both students and staff, to have that week off. We've had very favorable feedback from families. I will tell you, I do know some staff wish we would align with Washoe and do a fall break. Washoe does a fall break October 7th through October 11th, because we do have some staff that work in Washoe County, but it's always that situation where we have staff that also live in Lyon County. We have staff that live in Douglas, so we can't always match those needs. So we left it again alone to have the week of Thanksgiving off. It seems to have worked.
You know, I think I like that we give families that week, both for our students and our staff. You know, it feels like everybody's so rushed to do everything nowadays that sometimes the only time you see your family is Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so to give them that time to not only see their family, but maybe do some family things, some recreation with, you know, the family they don't see much, I think is great.
Thank you. And again, I do think our community appreciates it, our families. I've not had concerns expressed by local families. Like I said, I know staff that live in Washoe, it's a challenge for it. I do understand that. Winter break is easy. That's nice. All districts that I looked up have the same winter break. So that winter break would be December 23rd through January 3rd. We are looking to do a PD day on January 6th with students coming back on the 7th. We did that this year, and we got very favorable feedback from our staff just through conversations and some thank you emails, because as you all know, we actually did a half day of PD and gave them a half day for of in-classroom preparation and planning time for kids to come back. And we've had a lot of teachers who've said, oh my goodness, that made just a huge difference in me being able to be really prepared on the 7th and be able to welcome our kids back, just raring to go.
Just to comment on that, I did hear from some parents who have younger children who were like, what, Christmas break isn't over on Monday? Because, you know, they're kind of ready for them to go back to school at that point. So I understand, but there was.
I was one of those parents.
Yeah. I know, that's the students versus staff. So that we plan to keep. Spring break is all over the place in the state of Nevada. No one has the same spring break. So ours has always been traditionally attached to Easter. And this year we went, I think it was the week before Easter. No, excuse me, it was the week after Easter, so the Friday and then the week after. But since spring break, since Easter is falling so late next year, I went back to the week before Easter and then the Monday after, right? And it was just because it falls so late. Lyon would have the week before ours, and Clark County, for instance, is in March. Clark and Washoe are like March 17th. So they go third quarter break, fourth quarter, and theirs is not attached to Easter as a holiday at all. So that's just keeping to our tradition of what we've done in our district and what our families are used to. Our proposed last day of school then would be Thursday, June 5th. As you guys all know, we try to make sure we end on a Thursday so that the high schools have time to review transcripts before graduation. So it builds in that time for our staff. Otherwise, it's a real crunch. If we go up through Friday and teachers are trying to post, and then our counselors are staying up all night Friday night trying to clear transcripts before we allow students to participate in graduation ceremony. So we did that a couple times back when I was the principal, and I begged the district, please don't do that. My counselors are working literally until 9, 10 o'clock at night. So we do not do that. We make sure we end on Thursday. That's why we have a Thursday end date. Washoe would end the day after us on June 6th. Douglas, again, not posted. Lyon, and Lyon would be June 13th, so a whole week after us. And Clark actually finishes on May 23rd. So Clark always finishes quite early because they don't have that full fall break or an extended winter or spring break. They're straight 180. Our 3 contingency days are June 6th, 9th, and 10th. As you all know, we are required to identify contingency days in case we have snow days. However, I will say that we don't typically have to use them because we have so much built-in instructional time that we're able to get snow days waived. But we still are required to determine what days those would be. Our start and end times for all of our schools would remain the same next year. Let me see, we do have currently, I wrote this down somewhere. Well, we have equivalent to 5 professional learning days that are allowed by the state. So what we do for our minimum days, just so you know, is we break that time because it's time equivalent, and that's how we end up with the time to be able to do minimum days. And then because we're on alternative calendar, we're able to count instructional minutes instead of your traditional 180. So we're alternative calendar. That being said, I want you to know that we have extensive amount of time beyond what's required at the state. For our elementary schools, we have equivalent to 38 additional days of instructional time built into our schedule than what's required by state law. For middle schools, we have 16 days of equivalent instructional time, and for our high school, we have 6 days of additional instructional time. As tradition has been in our district, we do have 3 days that teachers work prior to students returning. 2 days of that time is spent for professional learning. The district takes one of those days. We do PD this year. We're going to have a new elementary math textbook adoption. So for instance, all of our elementary teachers on that district day before school starts have to get training on how to use that new material. And then sites get 1 day. So we do have that. And then the Friday before school starts, teachers have by contract a teacher work day so they can get their classrooms ready to go. So that looks the same. New hire is going to start on what is that, August 7th. That's a Wednesday. We shifted that this year so that new hires went Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, and then returning teachers come back on that Wednesday. In the past, we've tried where we had new hires go Monday through Friday of the week before, gave them Monday, Tuesday off, and then they came back Wednesday. The feedback we've had from our new hires is they like the continuity of days, so we stuck with that this year. So we're going to continue that new hire program that we've had with those days. So that is what we currently have planned, and I'm requesting approval unless you have some ideas and things that you would like me to change.
The built-in instructional days, could you tell me the hours or the days that you have again for those? You have 6 days for high school, 16 for middle?
16 extra days of equivalent instructional time, days of time for middle school, and 38 for elementary.
And that's days?
So, and let me explain how this goes.
Yeah,
so,
I butchered that.
Yeah.
I was trying to explain that to somebody. I was going to ask you that.
In a traditional calendar under NRS, Nevada state law, schools on a traditional calendar are required to have 180 days, and those 180 days have to be a certain amount of instructional minutes. The number of required instructional minutes changes by grade level. So kinders have their own it's kinder, then 1, 2, then 3 through 5 have a different one, or 3 through 6, then 7, 8 have a different number of minutes, and 9 through 12. So it's all broken up in terms of how long your 180 days would have to be in terms of minutes as well. We're on an alternative calendar, which means instead of counting actual days, even though we do have 180 days, we get to just go by instructional minutes. So when you add up what NRS requires in terms of instructional minutes over that time and what we have, our school days are longer, right, of instructional minutes. If you look at it just by time, and then you say, here are normal, so for instance, our normal high school day is 345 minutes, right? So if you add up the amount of instructional minutes that our high schoolers spend in time in school compared to what the state requires us to do, our instructional minutes add up to 6 additional days at 345 minutes. And then it's same thing for middle school. It adds up to 16 days if you broke it down just by minutes, more than state law requires, and for elementary, 38 days. So what that means is we literally could either have a schedule for elementary school that was 38 days shorter than we currently have. We could go with 4-day weeks for elementary. We could actually go with, well, at least like 3.5-day weeks, really, and meet state law. Is where I'm just saying that's equivalent.
now.
And I like to explain that to our parents, right? Because again, when they look at these minimum days, they're like, you're missing so much school. And I'm like, no, we're really not. Because we really could be on 3.5-day weeks for elementary and meet what state law requires. Now,
You know, on the state board, we've had conversations recently about, is there a seat time requirement? No, there's not. Yes, there is. And then, you know, with the portrait of a learner, you know, I was going to say activity, but framework that's being developed, you know, they're trying to move away from that where it's more competency based. And so I'm just wondering, at the district level, what's your understanding? Because it's gone back and forth in those meetings.
so I could tell you NRS until they change NRS. NRS says you either have to have a traditional 180-day calendar that has a minimum amount of this many minutes, depending on the grade level, or a traditional calendar that can be as many days as you want, as long as your instructional minutes add up to that. So that's still in state law. So until state law is changed, which I know there's been a lot of conversation about changing state law, but it hasn't been changed yet. So we have to adhere to that. And the same thing goes like for Carnegie unit for credits for secondary. So in a secondary school, you have to have equivalent to 60 hours per class in order to earn a half credit. And again, I know as a state, we've had discussions about changing that, but it hasn't been changed yet. So until it actually changes in state law, we are required as a district to follow that.
Go ahead, Molly.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for your work on this because I know it isn't easy. However, can you explain the need for 18 professional development days or the minimum days? Why so many? And because the question that I was given is to ask, if you reduce that, then we could possibly start a little bit later. I know the push to start, you know, after Labor Day is there, you know, or even possibly the 26th, you know, a little bit later when it's nicer in the summer. So what is the need for it, and is that mandated by state law to have so many hours for professional development?
So no, but that is what educational research tells us our professionals need in order to do their jobs well. So professional research tells us educators should be meeting in weekly PLCs, right? Being able to work with their colleagues to co-plan. In our district, especially in secondary, that's really difficult because at Carson High School, for instance, they have over 100 teachers. There's no way to give teachers common prep periods and build a master schedule around that. So then we ask our teachers to give up their time before school or after school to meet in those PLCs, which they only have approximately 30 minutes, maybe after school, after students leave. But then we have so many IEPs and 504s and ILIP meetings that we can try that, we schedule that, but then teachers are being pulled to go in many different places. Or we have many of our teachers who do clubs or activities or sporting events or sports, et cetera. So there's no co-planning time for teachers. We try before or after school. So by having those minimum days twice a month, it allows us to build in time for our teachers to have those meetings. And at our elementaries, they actually do have common preps, but we've just agreed with OCA this last session of negotiations to not have teachers pulled for their prep periods on the weeks that we have minimum days. So it builds in that time to give teachers that co-planning time, but then we're also required to provide professional development to teachers on myriad things. Like the list, we had a professional learning planning meeting today, and the list of things was like, there's 15 different topics. Before you do anything specific to your school improvement plan, that teachers have to do training on. Like slips, trips, and falls, blood-borne pathogens, mandatory reporting, we have to do training on protected classes and how and bullying and bullying deterrence. And so by the time you take everything that's required by state law and say, okay, every year we have to do training on this, here's this whole list, now we're going to provide training on that, and then you say to schools, now you have a school and performance plan and school goals that you have to move your teachers through, that the state also requires professional learning to be addressed in a school performance plan. So you're required to put that in your plan and then provide that training. When are they going to provide that training if we don't have that built-in time for them? So again, I just implore people to realize teachers are professionals, right? They don't work in professions that don't require training. These are highly skilled, educated professionals that require ongoing professional development and ongoing time to be able to work with their colleagues in professional learning communities to take a look at data and come up with action plans for how to help our students move forward. And if we don't build that time in, when are we expecting to do that? After their contract, when they're not getting paid? I mean, so we have an obligation to make sure that we protect that time for our teachers. And I understand that's hard for families. I truly do. I understand. I have 3 children myself. I understand that. But we don't certainly go to other different professions and say, hey, we need you to watch our children, so could you give up your professional learning? You know, you wouldn't. By the way, dentists and doctors in the community, if you could actually extend your school hour or your work hour so our kids don't have to miss school to go to the dentist, we would appreciate that. But we don't get to mandate that. Do you know what I mean? It just does, it seems like an unfair expectation from the community that we don't give our professionals the time to do what they need to do to be highly skilled in their area, right? I mean, to me, that's a professional courtesy. These are professionals, and it's a highly skilled profession where teachers need to, again, be able to look at their student data and make plans for what they're going to do for students who are struggling. 45 minutes that we give them for prep time is not enough time to do that. So we build that in through those minimum days.
Just a comment on the minimum days, because I've been here for a while and seen how we've done it over it. As a parent, I appreciate the consistency of being on the 2nd and 4th, because you can schedule something. When they were just kind of random and you didn't know when they were going to be, you had the calendar, but it wasn't consistent. You could schedule a music lesson this afternoon. You could schedule something, since you know it's so consistent throughout the calendar. So I appreciate that.
I also think we've had a lot of discussions over the last several years about increasing student achievement. And I think that that time to collaborate and plan has actually contributed to the success rate of a lot of our schools, which, you know, it's really commendable if you really compare it to a lot of schools in the state. And so if we're expecting the district to increase student achievement, we have to give them the time to do that. For professional development, the time to work. I've had, you know, I rarely hear people commending professional learning, and I've had people saying how they're able to meet with other schools in similar jobs, and so like they're able to actually have a PLC where if you have one librarian in a school, that's one person. But if they're able to meet with the other librarians, they could problem solve and work out some curriculum type issues and projects. And so, you know, I think some people really are starting to enjoy that time. And I think that we have to provide the time if we want to see improvements.
Tasha, I think I asked you the same question last time. Under the middle school parent conferences, I only see 1 week versus the elementary section has 2 different weeks. Are we just doing 1 week for middle schools?
Yes, we are. And this was the first year that we actually did middle school conferences. So that might change in the future, but getting feedback from the 2 middle school principals about whether or not they felt they needed the extra time in the spring, the feedback from them was, no, we their goal in their parent-teacher conferences, at least to do school-wide parent-teacher conferences like they did here, was to establish rapport and relationship with those families early on. They will continue to do parent conferences throughout the year for students who are struggling. But the difference here is that at the elementaries, they try to have 100% participation both spring and fall, right? Having the families come in. So again, this was the first year we brought back middle school parent conferences, and they said, okay, let us do it in spring, or excuse me, in the fall, and try to work on building rapport, relationship, and getting our families in here so that we can up engagement. So when I asked them if they wanted to add back in spring for next year, they said, no, not yet. We'll build towards that. But if you could give us another year of doing the fall, like I said, our goal is just to try to build rapport and relationship with families and get them in, then they want it. That's why. It wasn't that we as a district said, no, you can't have that time. It was, what's your feedback from your staff? How did you feel it went? Did you want them? And they're like, well, we actually, you have to remember, have meetings throughout the year with families of struggling students. So,
Gotcha.
so that was the feedback.
So one of the reasons why I asked was because on that survey that was brought to our last meeting, parents were asking for parent-teacher conferences. And so that's why I thought, I wonder why we're not having a second week for middle schools, but thank you for that response.
And we'll keep bringing that back for consideration by the middle schools. I will.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, as a thought, but it is very difficult. And the challenge always becomes in the number, right? So even at the middle schools, even with the number of these days, each student has 6 teachers. So it becomes a question of there's no way all 6 teachers can meet with all 160 kids that they have within this. You physically cannot do it. So they were having like teachers meet with the students in their homeroom. And that means that a parent is still only meeting with one of their students' teachers to try to get feedback that other teachers have given them in that team kind of model. But again, families or students that are struggling, they're having come in so they, at different times that they can actually meet with all 6 teachers at the same time. And this structure, it's not the same as elementary, right? I'm an elementary teacher, I have 24 kids, I can meet with all 24 parents during that time frame. So it just looks real different at the middle school level.
But it's good to know that the parents whose children are struggling are able to have a parent-teacher conference with their teachers. Okay.
Rich, go ahead.
A lot of work went into this, so thank you. But my question is, on the professional learning days where you have training, if it's not applicable to certain staff members, are they offered different training or different opportunities to do something different?
Yes, they are. And again, that was my 2-hour professional learning meeting today. And I'm going to tell you, it sounds like a lot, Molly, and I agree with you. But today, as we're parceling out everything that has to be done, all the state required professional learning that has to be done, as well as the PD that we're trying to do to help move district initiatives like MTSS forward. Right? And then looking at, well, how much time does that mean we can actually carve out for schools to do school-based thing? There's still, everyone's looking at me going, we need more time. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to go to the board and ask for more time. But everybody says there needs to be more time. That being said, because there is such a need, we try to do differentiated learning opportunities. We've been doing a lot of building an asynchronous library of trainings, for instance, so that administrators can say, well, Tasha is a first-year teacher, and Tasha is really struggling with classroom management. And even though I've got these teachers who are really going to work on increasing their skills with literacy and really meeting students' needs there, if I train Tasha on that when she's just struggling to get students to work in groups together, that's going to go nowhere for me. So can we now do some individualized training by teachers' needs? So we're building our capacity to do that, using Canvas as a tool and building online classes in that manner. The other thing we've talked about, I'm going to give a shout out to Ms. Cruikshanks as an example. our principal of Mark Twain Elementary. She was showing me her data today. She's showing me she's got these teachers who are just knocking it out of the park on math with their kids, struggling in English language arts. We've got another set of teachers who are knocking it out of the park on English language arts, who's struggling with math. So we had conversations, well, now how can we leverage our professional learning time instead of making everyone do the same math training on math reasoning to say you teachers are actually rocking math reasoning, but you need support in English language arts and figuring out how to do your groups with HMH, so let's do training there. So we're constantly working to provide that and figure out how we can use our resources to tailor professional learning a little bit better to meet the needs of our teachers.
Do you sometimes tailor training for the parapros?
We do. We have we've purchased an online program, which the name is eluding me right now off the top of my head, but it's like a teacher something, but so that again, principals can work with their parapros to say, who are you supporting within the school? Because there's a difference between the job of like an EL parapro and a parapro who's in an alternative standards program, right? So trying to tailor it to what do you need as an individual? And the nice thing is about our online program that we purchased this year is our parapros can earn micro-credentials. They actually develop a professional transcript that shows what courses they've taken and that they've been trained in. So we're using that with interventionists as well.
Thank you. I want to say I always appreciate your presentations. They're always very informative and very complete, so thank you.
So Tesha, I just want to say thank you a lot. Obviously, a lot goes into this calendar. If anybody thought a lot of effort didn't go in and a lot of input didn't go in, now they know differently. So thank you for that. I am glad we're able to start school on the 19th instead of the week before, because I think when you talk about mental health and just perception, you know, like this school year, we started whatever the date was, and the teachers had to come back several days before that, and the new hires had to come back even a little bit earlier. People are having to think about school and, you know, really start preparing in July. And some teachers do. I mean, I live with one that never stops planning for school. But the reality is some people just want that break, and it just mentally, it's like, oh my God, I've got to get all my ducks in a row, and it's not even August yet. So I just think mentally it's a good start to the school year for folks. And really, I've talked to a lot of people this school year, and I think every year I'm seeing the level of frustration really, from what I've seen, has gone down. You know, like we said with Dan, there's always room to improve, but I think we're making some positive steps, and that's nice to see. Everything from the dates, the calendar, what's being learned, the diversity of learning, so everybody during these PLCs are getting what they need. I mean, it all seems to be moving in a good direction, and I know you're a big part of that, so thank you. This is an action item. Do we have anybody that either has any
I'll go
questions or
ahead.
wants to make a motion?
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the wrong one. Approve the 2024 to 2025 academic calendar as submitted.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further board discussion? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none. Board, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Again, thank you.
Mr.
And I know it's not just you, so thank you to everybody who, you know, does this with you.
Mr. President, I have a question. I'm wondering, because we have a flexible agenda and I believe we have some presenters and some people looking to possibly hear what's happening with agenda item 12. Would the board be in favor of moving that one next? Or am I just making up what I'm thinking might be what people want to? You think I'm making? Oh, okay.
No, I have no issue. You know, we have the ability to take things out of order, and I have no problem with moving item 12 up if there's no objections from the board and no objections from our attorney.
Completely in your discretion as the president to shift it.
Okay, then we're going to go ahead. We're going to continue, and we're going to hit the other items, but we're going to go ahead and move item 12 up to now, and that is discussion and possible action to approve a monetary incentive for early notification from administrative, certified, classified staff on their intent to resign or retire from the Carson City School District at the conclusion of the 2023-2024 school year, which may have a fiscal impact not to exceed $40,000 within the current budget cycle. This is a possible action item, and we have Mr. Dan Sadler and Mr. Superintendent Andrew Fueling.
Thank you, President Cassioppo. So at the last board meeting, we brought this idea to you as an agenda item to consider some type of incentive to encourage folks who are considering retiring or resigning at the end of the year to provide some type of monetary incentive for giving us an early notification of that. We've continued discussions on our side and considered feedback from the last meeting from you all. And Mr. Sadler has gone through and tried to pull together some data to, I think, it just enlighten the discussion a little bit so we can continue the consideration of this item. So I will let Mr. Sadler take it from here.
Thank you, Mr. Fueling. Oh. You know, I went back and watched the video from last week to just make sure I captured everything, and I noticed that I'm always hunching over like this with the microphone, so I need to bring an extension. Anyway, so first and foremost, I just wanted to present some information, historical data, and just looking at the last 2 school years. What you see before you here is just the total number of resignations and retirements from the 21-22 school year, and then from last school year as well. So the blue represents the resignations and retirements in total, and that orange graph represents the number of people who actually completed the school year. And I think that's just an important starting point in this conversation as we look at some trend data. This next slide, again, going back to the 21-22 school year, sure thing. That's all staff, all employees. Thank you. So with that first year of the 2 sets of data, the 21-22 school year, on this graph, you can see as it moves along those lines, each time there's a number there, that was when we had a board meeting on the bigger graph, just so you're aware. And the orange represents resignations, and the blue represents retirements. Below that, you can kind of see a heat map, like if green being like that's a really good time to receive that information for us as a district as far as communication goes. And the further we go into the summer, all the way up into July, obviously it's very difficult to replace people in positions at that time of the year. So for 21-22, you can see by this graph that that was a very difficult year for us as far as that information getting in our hands, able to take action on it. The total numbers again would be 28 early notifications, and that would be before March 2022 of that year. Last meeting we had discussed, I think initially when we were talking about this, like mid-February, but with pushing this back, if this were something we were to approve and move forward with, that we would extend until like the beginning of March as kind of like that early window. So comparatively, 139 late notifications would be April through August. And again, the later we go, the harder they are to fill. Looking at last school year, it was kind of a mixed bag. Again, the blue represents official retirements, the orange resignations. We did get a good chunk of people who notified us early, specifically for those retirements. The resignations are kind of all over the board. And then you can see as we get later in the summer there, we did not have additional retirement notifications. But still interesting when we look at that heat map that we had 28 that would be considered in that early window, and then 48 that were those later notifications. And again, for these 2 slides, all of this information is incorporating people who did complete the school year. So it wasn't somebody who resigned in February and then they were done in February. This would be someone who maybe let us know that they were resigning, but they completed their year. And so taking some of the feedback from our discussion and realizing that there's still certainly opportunity for feedback here today if we were to move forward with this, our recommendations would be that we would list as 1,000 per employee for submitting their notification for retirement. Now, I know there was some discussion about retirement or resignation, and kind of one thing that I put, it's the fourth bullet point on this chart would be that you must have completed 5 years of employment with the district. That was something that I think got brought up several times, was can we have some type of qualifier for people? 5 years seemed to make the most sense because with 5 years, you're vested into PERS. And so whether they are actually retiring with PERS or not is really out of our control. But if they notified us that they are retiring or resigning, but they've completed 5 years of employment, and that 5 years would include this year. So if this was their 5th year, then they would be included in that eligibility. Again, just as a recommendation.
When this top bullet, so 1,000 per employee up to $40,000 vacancy savings. Well, if heaven forbid you had more people than that 40,000 amount, would it be wise to say up to $1,000 per employee, so that, it's not like you're going to tell somebody, no, you can't retire, and you can't really give an incentive to candidate A and not Z because we've exceeded the amount. So in that case, if there were more than enough people to account for that whole 40,000, then you would divide it equally between the people who put it in.
Yeah, I think that would certainly be something we could do. We've had discussions about that
I'm
as
just
well.
thinking of-
If you ended up with 50 people put in for it, then
Yeah.
it reduces the amount from 1,000.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So would this also be anybody who has put in already?
If they complete their school year, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
Must be the first retirement from the district. We have a handful of employees who are critical needs. They came back to work for us after officially retiring. They would not qualify for this. Must complete and submit the form to Human Resources by March 1st. That's, I believe, a Friday. So, yeah, completing the month of February and allowing for March 1st and having that be a hard stop deadline that it must be submitted to HR by then. The employee must complete the last day of work or contract day of the fiscal year. And people have different work calendars depending on what position they're in. So for us, that would mean, like teachers are going to work through their last day. They're still getting their paycheck through the completion of their contract year, but they're not working those days, right? They've already completed their work days. Whereas somebody who, if they were a year-round employee, they'd be working through the end of July on their days, on whatever their fiscal year is. The incentive would be paid on the final pay period check. And I think that's something that would be important to distinguish, because when people retire from our district, if they have sick days or personal days that are paid out, depending on their age, that's then put into a retirement account that they have to access, and we don't really have any control over that. This incentive, we would like to pay on the final pay period check that they would receive. And then certainly any other considerations that you'd like us to take a look at.
Thanks for bringing that up, Mike. I had the same concern. If you had 60 people retire or resign, then how do you handle that? So if it's up to $1,000, I think that'd be fair. And then the other question I have, I guess, is this a one-year thing? We're not committing to doing this from now on, are we? Or is it just for this fiscal year?
Thank you for that question. No, we are just considering this for this year. I think if this moved forward, we would get some information out of this to see if this is something that we'd like to consider, but this proposal is just for this school year.
It looks like a few people have already notified you that they're retiring, so I think Molly's point was they would get it also, right?
Yes.
So Dan, forgive me if I missed this part, but what is the reason why we are not offering this to a part-time employee? Because it says must be a full-time benefited employee.
I don't know, AJ, you want to take that one?
I think while clearly all of our part-time employees do great service to the district. It gets really complicated. Like we have part-time employees that work very, very, very few hours. We have some part-time for us is basically working up to 3.5, so we'll say 3.5 hours per day. But there's a range well down below that. And I think at this point, especially being the first year we're trying this, and the focus really being on making sure those full-time benefited positions are filled and filled early going into the next school year. I think this is our kind of attempt at that focus. I would say in the future it's certainly possible, or maybe there's some prorated amount as we go down with the number of hours, but it does get really complicated. So I think this is a first effort to see if this helps us to provide a better service for our students coming back next year. I think it's worthwhile at this point.
And I was going to ask that same question. I think given that this is the first year, it's kind of a trial run, and I can understand why we kind of want to keep it under some control. But when I think about like our CESA employees and whatnot who are part-time, and I look at for years and years and years, we're constantly looking for custodial staff, bus drivers, things like that. Those positions too, the earlier we know, easier it is to fill. So I think those are benefited.
Yeah, so
those would count for this.
They would. It's just like if we
Even
have
if it's not full
if we have a substitute custodian position, like talking about custodial positions, a substitute position would not be eligible for it.
Okay.
Or something like that. But otherwise, if they're receiving health benefits as an employee working more than 4 hours a day, they effectively become eligible for this.
Okay, all right. I misunderstood. So thanks for the clarification. Any other questions?
Just a comment. I like that they don't receive this incentive until the end of the fiscal year. And I think that not only helps our students for the next year to be prepared to have a teacher, but I think it helps the students in the current year so that they don't, maybe it's not that much of incentive, but at least keep maintaining that consistency of the teacher and the staff in the position through the end of the school year.
And at the end, AJ, since you're a numbers guy, does this come to them as a gross or net benefit?
It would be a gross number. The $1,000, I guess the $40,000 number is a gross number. However, that gets distributed out from there.
I asked because we did something not similar, but we did at work. We did some bonuses, and everybody got a set amount. But then the way our accountant said to set it up tax wise, somebody who got maybe a $1,500 bonus, they only saw whatever it was, $937. And they were like, what the heck? You said I was getting something else.
Yeah. Uncle Sam,
Jelly
I tell you. Yeah.
Jelly of the Month Club, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, again, this is kind of the first attempt at that. And certainly we'll be giving you information coming back in the fall on the success of this, potentially, to consider in the future. But, that may be the sort of thing we get some feedback on where, if you're thinking of this dollar amount, and it's hard because psychologically you kind of anchor on that, and that's the number, and then you see it come through in your check, and man, that Uncle Sam, he's rough, right? So, potentially it's something that we continue to fine tune if we do continue this.
Mike, then Rich.
I'm wondering if Spencer, if maybe we could put you on the spot. In Lyon County, this is common practice, and it hasn't ever been an issue that I've encountered, but that doesn't mean when they started doing it, there weren't some cautionary tales that we might want to consider before starting this for the first year. Is there anything that comes to mind, Spencer?
Spencer Warner, for the record, no. A lot of this is modeled off very close to kind of what Lyon County does. We don't want to one-up them and do more than they do. $1,000 actually is what they do. They have not put a monetary cap. We requested some data from them to kind of see, what the last 5 years, what those numbers were, but didn't get that back in time for this meeting.
I guess maybe since you're here, Stuart, what I would be concerned about is if we do it this year, since we're doing it this year, and any of you guys, are we setting a precedent that we're going to have to continue this? Because if we can't have, if we don't have the money next year, are we going to set up people to say, well, people who retired last year got $1,000, they're not giving me anything, so heck with them. I'll quit at the last minute.
I'm not overly concerned about that because again, you know, as we're presenting this to you and as it'll be presented to our employees, that this is a 1-year trial run to kind of see if the data that we get from it and if we have enough people, you know, if those people that wait till the end of the year to notify, if they decide, you know, maybe they've made up their mind now and just aren't letting us know. If that gives us data to get positions out there to get higher quality teachers in sooner, then, you know, obviously it's going to be in our best interest to continue this. If it doesn't, then we can say we tried that. It wasn't worth the investment that we put into it. And, you know, there might be some people who missed it by a year that might be a little bit upset, but I think long-term there wouldn't be any major ramifications.
I mean, I think that one of the things that I think Dan is doing so great at in this position is he's looking forward, and this is a real problem for all of our schools. It's hard. It's harder and harder every year to find teachers, paraprofessionals, bus drivers. And so the earlier we know we're going to have those vacancies, that's time and money saved by our district. And so we're paying a little up front to eliminate, you know, things that are going to hurt the students in the long run. So I think that this is a good idea because it's needed.
If I may, since I'm up here, Spence went over the record once more. I kind of, you know, a good scenario would be, it's like first round draft picks. You know, if by doing this, we get 5 more first round draft picks of teachers, as opposed to 3rd or 4th or 5th round draft picks, I think that does better for our team here. And that's one of the main objectives of what this is to, you know, to load our first round draft picks as best we can. And for the investment, I think that's a pretty minimal amount to bring in better teachers for our students.
Yeah, so unless anybody has any other questions, yeah, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve a monetary incentive for early notification from administrative, certified, and classified staff of their intent to resign or retire from the Carson City School District at the conclusion of the 2023-2024 school year, which may have a fiscal impact not to exceed $40,000 within the current budget cycle.
Okay, motion by Trustee Ramirez, second by Trustee Walker. Any further board discussion? Seeing none, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Hopefully this,
Thank you.
hopefully this works. Yeah. Okay, now we're going to jump back to item 10. Actually, before I do that, we've been going almost 3 hours. Does anyone need a break, a formal break, or do you want to keep going? Okay, we're going to keep going. If anyone needs a break, you know you're welcome to.
Did you check with Renee? She's the one who matters.
Renee is good to go. So we're going to move on to item 10. Informational update on the metric goals for the Carson City School District's strategic plan, Empower Carson City 2027. This is a discussion-only topic. Superintendent Fueling is presenting.
Thank you, President Cassiopa. Since everyone is doing so well, I will just go through this in excruciating detail because clearly we have time. This is really just a check-in at this point. Part of the strategic plan, there is an expectation that I am coming back to report back to you on how we are doing. And so as a board, you know, you made it really clear going into last year that as we've had this plan, really establishing some kind of benchmarks along the way was important. So we could kind of in a general sense, just, you know, see how things are going. So this the kind of the left 2/3 of the document, I think, should look sort of familiar from when we were going through that process of establishing these success standards in relation to each goal of the strategic plan. And I realize the formatting of this isn't maybe perfect, and I can work on that, but I guess at this point wanted to show that, you know, some work has definitely gone into trying to establish what benchmarks were from last year. So you see that yellowish, tannish column as you go down through all the goals, trying to collect some of this data. I would say one of the you know, I think there's value in all of these standards. They're clearly some of this data just doesn't really exist up to this point, or it exists in some really unfun places to try to get through and pull it out. So it's something that is actually taking quite a bit of time, but it's something we're working on, and I would say ultimately establishing processes going forward that we will have this data and it will be easier to collect over time. But just to give you a sense of how I'm putting this together, so again, that yellow column effectively represents last year as best as we know it, unless it otherwise says so. And then when you look to the right of that, I broke it up into the different seasons, I guess, of the year, the quarters of the year. And one of the things I think is important to understand, and we've had quite a bit of discussion on this at the executive team level, is that there's just points in time. Most of these are not, they're not data pieces that we have on a continuous, you know, just regular interval where it's like every quarter we're collecting it or every month we're collecting it. And in some cases, it makes more sense, even if you could collect it, to just collect it at one point during the year. And so the example I'll use here right on the first page under Goal 1, the second success standard says CCSD will maintain less than 5% of benefited positions being vacant during the school year. Last year, that was at about 7.2%. And then talking with Mr. Sadler, and we could theoretically collect that every single quarter. We could collect that at any point in time. We could know that number. However, there's this nice kind of pause in the year in terms of when HR has positions posted, we know what jobs are filled, and we haven't started looking at reposting positions for the next year. There's a lot less noise within that. So really, as of kind of I think this number, if I recall, came from December 1st as kind of a nice point in time to collect and say, we're right in the smack middle of the school year. How are we doing? And so the number for that comes up is 2.84%, which is better than last year, and I'm very thankful for that. And a lot of work has gone into making that happen. But I think that's more meaningful in that situation than trying to collect it at every point throughout the school year.
My question is, when I'm looking at this, of each of these objectives, some of them have well over 5 strategies. It's almost like if we had a school that was doing a school improvement plan and they had this many different things that they're saying they're working on in the year, it's really tough. Is there a way to prioritize some of these and maybe pare them down, and that's the focus of this year or this semester, as opposed to 500 things we're monitoring? Sure. That's tough.
I think so. There's kind of two parts to that. I think what was important, when we went through this process of saying, what are some of these benchmarks we're going to use? What are these success standards we're going to use? Because if we attach one to every single strategy that is on here, that is going to be a mountain of mess of work for people to do. And so from that, trying to narrow it down to the ones we have here and have those more as kind of, it may not be exactly the language of what you see in the strategy or what you see in the objective, but is it a good indicator that in this case, we're doing a good job with staff in terms of district need? And that's where I think these four under the success standards are pretty good indicators overall. And not that they, we may find that, maybe it's not a great indicator, maybe there's something else we should look at. I do think as well that even within this, there may be times where there is a much more of a focus on specifics within the entire strategic plan, right? Just given the nature of where we are within a given year, how students are performing, all the mental health issues we're dealing with. There may be points in time where we say, look, this is really where we need to focus as a district. And so maybe those metrics become a little more valuable. I was just thankful that you didn't force me to have one for every single strategy along the way, because that would have been a lot of work to maintain. So I think in terms of what we have here and just having the fewer success standards and starting with that, it's a good place for now. And we know that we can start collecting some of this data. And some, I think, ultimately may be more meaningful than others, and we may have different priorities over time as we go through.
Because another aspect of this is so important is communicating with the community of what we're working towards. And so it's almost, this is kind of like our working document, our grade book that we're working off as a board. But for the public, I'm wondering if we couldn't just do a plan with the success standards, because we're going to turn people off if they have these many different objectives and strategies to look at. They're not going to invest.
I think that's actually a really good point. So one of the problems with education, I think, is that we generally do a really bad job of communicating what can be a really simple way to communicate what we do in education. We make it as complicated as possible, and we throw in as many acronyms as we can. And there's so much specialized language. Tasha made the comment before about these highly trained individuals that are working for us and working for kids every single day. It has become so specialized. I mean, I think if you went into a conversation in education 40 years ago, the average person probably would have had a better chance of understanding exactly what's going on. The language now has gone way off. The amount of research that goes into education now, right? It has grown so much and has become so much more specialized. So I think there is something to be said for, as much as having the strategic plan, that as a public-facing document or explanation, that it is focused more on these standards. And we could explain within that this is supposed to be a reflection of the success of the strategic plan, but it likely would make more sense to them if you wiped out some of this and you just had, here's the goal, and here are the things we say are the success standards of how are we doing towards meeting that goal, and keep it as simple as that. That's certainly something we can consider when we... Going through this, I don't know if there's anything specific that anyone would like to discuss. I think overall, we're generally moving in a good direction. Some things we just don't have this year's data on, so it's hard to, when you get to goal 2, curriculum that matters, where standardized tests are ways off, graduation is a ways off still. So we don't have that information. And the way that I had this set up, like for there being kind of the white and the gray boxes, basically the quarter that we would expect to have that information, or we do have it, is white. And then the gray ones is, they're just, it's not being collected at that time. So it gives a sense too of kind of anticipation of when we may know some of these things. And again, some things that we just do have data for. There's some things we don't. There's some things in here that I do have data for, but it is just taking some time to get through. I'll point out in goal 4, healthy generations, The second success standard, 25% of students grades 6-12 will participate in co-curricular or extracurricular activities. And this actually kind of leads into some of the superintendent goals we'll go through in a bit. I've asked all the schools to basically send me all the student information. They have the lists of students that are participating in all of the activities that are offered. It's been really interesting digging into that, but there is still a ways to go of getting through all of the individual schools, and really kind of a learning process for us too, that in some cases, schools have a really tight process for keeping track of which kid is participating in everything, especially in athletics is a little tighter, especially at the high school, middle school level. Clubs can be hit or miss. And some clubs are very formalized clubs, some are not. As that information has come in, I've started trying to compile that and go through that so that I can come back and show you, are we there yet or are we not? But it's just not quite positive at this point. So at this point, I guess really, like I said, this is more or less a check-in. I'd much rather have complete data for you, but we're just not quite there yet. But this is still a work in progress. I would hope by the end of the school year or this summer, not only to have all that benchmark data as much as possible ready, but even then that data for 23 or this current school year ready to present to you, and so we can really kind of start on this course of making this a regular item for us to consider. So I'm happy to take any questions or any thoughts on this.
Yeah,
That's
AJ, I would say I tend to agree with Trustee Walker. I mean, finding a way to simplify this so that it's not such a, it's very comprehensive, and I like comprehensive, but at the same time, it's overwhelming. And when you're talking about goals and successes, sometimes less is more. We want to tackle these things, but staging them and figuring out how to consolidate some of this stuff. I agree with Mike. I think it's a good approach. One thing I noticed on goal 4, we talk about, healthy generations, and in the strategies, if you will, there's a little bit of conversation about nutrition. And I know that's been a little bit of a internal talk, seems like nutrition's always something we can tackle, that, that sweet spot of giving kids healthy choices, but if you give them too healthy, they don't eat them and they end up in the trash. So not that, I want to create a standard in there, but when we're thinking about a success, maybe getting some feedback over time about, what can we do to kind of lean things more towards the healthy side. And so it's not necessarily an academic standard. It's just, what are we feeding our kids? Anybody else have any comments for Superintendent Fueling?
Sure. Just a comment that I have. I think it is comprehensive, but that was also how the strategic plan was written. We wanted to include things in there, even that we were doing, to make sure that there was still budgeted money for some of these strategies that were important. So I think we don't want to get too much in the weeds on some of it. At the same time, I don't want us to confuse it with goals, because we should have narrower goals, but this strategic plan is going to be a little bit, by its very nature, more broad. So
And I think
that's all the comment I'm making on
Yeah,
that.
and I think we could achieve that. I think it's kind of somewhere in the middle. We've got a lot of stuff to look at, and I think we can stage and redistribute it, if you will. Anybody else? Okay. This was for discussion only, so thank you, and we'll move on to item 11. Discussion and possible action to approve the superintendent's goals for the 2024 calendar year. This one is for possible action, and again, we have Superintendent Fueling.
Thank you again, President Casiopo. Annually, I will present to you goals that I see as a need, as important as priorities for us and my work and our work here in the district. And I guess I would say as well, these in great part are the strategic plan really is a part of this, right? Like that a lot of that work, this might be more singular within a year given the needs, but ultimately it's always geared towards the work of that strategic plan. And actually, if I could have you go to the second page of this, so I have the goals that I had presented last time. Sometimes we just kind of jump ahead and don't really reflect back on what we had in place and what we were considering and how well we did, and where we are. And I think it's important here because some of these things, some of these goals, they haven't been completed, but they are still of a high priority. So there's 4 on here that we're still working on that have just continued on into this the new page that we'll go over. But first, and this is actually, we just talked about this, finalize all the metrics and establish a baseline data for the strategic plan. And in the red, I have some comment. So this, based on what we just went through, it's mostly complete, still processing some of the data, creating collection processes, and in some cases, waiting for Department of Ed to finalize some of their expectations for us. Returning high school graduation rates back to pre-pandemic highs, definitely still a work in progress. We are not there at this moment. 3, establish foundation to make instructional, curricular, and student academic behavioral support and mental health support structures to take us through the next decade. That is still a very active work in progress, and I think making some great strides in that work here over this last year, intensive work over this last year, but still work that needs to be done. Full staffing of all positions district-wide, based on that metric that we mentioned here in the on that first page with exceptional staff. That is something we have made significant improvement on. And with consideration for this early notification tonight that was approved, the incentive for that, hopefully that again will help support that. I would love to come to you and say it was 100%, right? That would be amazing. So that will continue to be a goal. I think we all recognize the stress it puts on the system and the stress it puts on our people when we have vacancies. And I think last year it's the best example I've ever seen of that. And I know it impacts other industries and other school districts, but I haven't lived it like last year. So I think that continuing as a priority is still really important. Increase the number of volunteers and community partners. So we don't really have much for definitive historical data on this, but we now have systems in place. I will say one of the things that was, and I want to thanks to Dan Davis and Kenny Robles at the high school, that works as our work-based learning coordinator. Before the holidays, we were looking at compiling a list. The idea that was to basically just say thanks to all of our community partners. And I had started putting together a list over time of community partners, and I had gotten to, I think, about 50. And I was really happy with that. That's a lot of support. And when I come to, Dan had been working on compiling this and talking to all the different departments and all the different schools and working with Kendra Lewis, and it was like over 200 long. And that was a moment for me, just thinking about how great this community is and the level of support we have. And it's all different, right? It's not all the same thing. It's not all monetary donations. It's not all, volunteer, organizational volunteering time, but every little bit makes a difference. And so that was just excellent to see. 6, we tried getting a bill passed during the session, and that didn't happen. So moving on. And then looking for a really big increase in funding, and I'll say a partial success. We definitely didn't get to 68.18%. I think that percentage was supposed to be like the absolute pie in the sky of finally reaching adequate funding for education. That's what it would take. But we did, we were able to support. Clearly, it wasn't just us in that fight, but a lot of good people trying to make change at the legislative level, and there was some success with increasing funding for education. So then moving to Oh, sure.
Before you move on, I'm just wondering if you couldn't have put some numbers in here that would have made it a little more meaningful for me, at least, like on the graduation rate. Instead of saying work in progress, maybe we could gone back to pre-pandemic and said it was 85%. And then this in 2023, it may have been only 87%. But you can show either it's increasing or decreasing. And the same with maybe the last one here, you asked for 68%. I mean, you know, that's the pie in the sky, but maybe we got 20%. So, I mean,
Yeah.
a number like that may have been good to have. Okay, we
Yeah.
got 20%. We didn't get the 68, but we got 20 or whatever. The
No,
case
and
may be.
that's a good point. Yeah, I that would have been helpful. I think in my mind, part of some of the graduation rate that ends up being a part of the strategic plan success standards, and thinking that that is the reference point. But ultimately, if I'm talking about pre-pandemic, that I don't have that kind of historical look back in here. So yeah, we could.
Yeah,
I can
that's
certainly put
one
that
of the
together.
goals, so that,
Sure.
thank you.
So then moving to the current year, 2024, really the first four are just carryovers from the prior year that we've already talked about, because there is still work to be done. And I think it's valuable work in every respect to continue moving us on a path towards greater success. Some things that have, clearly become a larger concern as we understand this world, this kind of post-pandemic world that we've talked about quite a bit. So this idea of chronic absenteeism, or just ultimately absenteeism, and looking to improve those numbers. We have put some pieces in place that are definitely making a difference, and I really, am really thankful for the work of our principals and just staff at the schools. I think really going after this and trying to find some of our kids and make it so that they want to be in school. We have some, I think, more exciting news coming up with this that I think will certainly help, and you'll hear more about that in the near future. But I think really taking a look at the resources we have and how we're using them, and maybe refocusing some of that work in some ways to really try to move this number faster, to get it back to a pre-pandemic number, which I'll get for you next time. I think clearly the mental health issue has, it continues to be much larger than what we are used to dealing with, and what our folks in the schools have been working through, trying to support kids and support families. It clearly is not going away. Although I think we're certainly doing, last year I think was a bit of a shock to the system to see some of the things we were dealing with our students. And this year I think we were in a better place and kind of better understood what to be prepared for. But trying to, I don't think this is going to get better anytime soon. And so I think having a mindset of we want to make this a long-term, what we have set up, the systems we have set up, the resources we have set up, trying to establish a way to make this a long-term sustainable support for students in the district to going forward. And so, the examples of some things I have our social workers, Care Solace, which is a software platform we use for families and even our staff to seek mental health support, but our counselors, local partners we have, nursing staff. There's a lot that goes into this, but I think expecting this to go away like next year is really unrealistic. So I think this is something that it has to be a focus, and we have to find a way to sustain as much of that as we can, where we see, especially where we're seeing great success. The last thing, one of the items that has come up in a lot of conversations, especially with principals, is really just this, and I would even say even more at the secondary level, but this kind of disengagement that appears to be happening with students and school. And I think that's reflected in the absenteeism numbers. I think it's probably partially reflected within some of the mental health issues that we're seeing with kids. And so really taking a look at that, and it's it's a really big item in terms of, why kids engage with school and why they want to be there. And we've talked about relationships before, and we know that's important. But even what we're offering kids in terms of curricular options, and we don't always have a whole lot of control over that. But I think it's worth at least asking the question. The reality is that what we consider kind of the core of education, it's been the core for about 100 years. Fortunately, nothing has changed in 100 years. So again, we don't have a whole lot of control of that, but I think it's really worthwhile to ask the question, because even if we don't have a lot of control over, maybe the types of courses we offer, maybe we do have some control over what they look like or how specialized they are, and within reason. We have limited resources, but I think that is a good conversation to have. I know Mr. Carson's at Carson High School has already kind of been engaging in this a little bit with surveying of students. So I think I appreciate that he was already kind of ahead of the game with that, but I think it's time well spent, and we'll learn a lot about what it takes to make sure that kids are finding value and interest in what we're offering when they see that there is relevance for them going forward. But then co-curricular and extracurricular activities as well. I think if you looked at what we were offering 30 years ago and what we're offering now, for the most part, a lot of it would be the same. And again, kids have changed and interests have changed, our demographics have changed. And so I think it's, part of this work of trying to collect and see what is the level of participation in these items for strategic plan purposes. The other side of that, I'm collecting it really for us as a district to be able to look at some of this. And again, we don't have great processes in place for that right now, but we're refining that as we go. But I think it's really worthwhile to look at that. And I use the phrase, and people vote with their feet. And so if we're seeing that participation is maybe not what we would expect, or just that there is not if a child is not engaging through regular curriculum, how are they engaging? And if the percentage of kids that are engaging then through co-curricular, extracurricular activities seems to be really low, and we're all saying that engagement is a problem, it's not about then, well, how do we force kids to do this? It's taking a look at what we're offering, and if they're going to vote with their feet, offer things that they want to be a part of.
You're kind of saying exactly what I'm thinking, because the way the goal's written, you might not be able to improve it because you have to get the kids to want to do it. You as a superintendent could want all you want, but if they don't sign up, they're not going to sign up. And so maybe the goal is just what you're explaining. It's to increase the opportunities or have more varied opportunities for co-curricular activities or CTE involvement, however you want to phrase it, because then that's something you and the district has control over, which will, the premise would be with more opportunities, participation would increase. See what I'm saying? And then it's something you could measure, because what I hate, like 6 and 7 both, you're tying that to your achievement as a superintendent, but how are you going to measure number 6? And so, maybe that's making sure that we have health professionals involved at each of our sites. So, you know what I mean? And I'm just saying, make it more the things you can control, because what I'd hate to do is be sitting here and arguing semantics, and it's something you can't even control in December,
Yes, piggybacking on what Trustee Walker has to say too. I think that, when I read this in the previous item, I thought the extracurricular activities is totally out of your control. And what I would encourage, or maybe even kind of look at, is your goal would be to find out, what is it? What is there is a problem, with extracurricular activities, the amount of students that aren't participating, but the goal would be more or less of finding out why. And then, possibly going and saying, okay, here's the reason why they're not participating or why there's a lack of engagement. So we find out what the problem is. And then next year's goal would be to possibly implement, options and whatever else. I think it's just too large to say, hey, this is what I'm going to do, because there is a problem, but we just don't even know what it is right now. What the kids are interested in, we don't know. Is it work? I mean, are they having to go right after school to work, or what is it? Yeah.
So then really maybe kind of refining that a bit, getting down to improving our level of understanding of what the engagement levels are and maybe why they might be that way, so that then we can, okay, yeah.
This is the beginning of you being the superintendent. And so right now you're still in the learning, formulating phase. And you're kind of setting that groundwork for what the future is going to be. And so I don't think any of us are expecting you to be, way, way down the line right now. We'd much rather you take the time and really get to know the community and the needs of the community and put plans in place that are going to improve the lives for these kids. And so, yeah. So,
Okay.
I mean, I'm just saying, be fair to yourself, because we're going to be forced to look at these goals and then rate you on a thing, and
Sure.
it's going to be tough to do that with some of these.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think, to piggyback on that as well, I think if there's something in here you want to do, you're like, for whatever reason, your knowledge is, I think this does already have merit and we've done research, rather than say, we're going to improve the level, we're going to create the opportunity to, or provide discussions to, something to say, I'm opening the door to this avenue, and it doesn't lock you in yet, but hey,
Sure.
we've opened up this conversation, we've started doing this. That's the measure. Hey, did you get something going at a discussion level or something?
Sure.
Great, but you haven't committed to improving the situation yet because you haven't fully vetted it yet.
Sure. Okay. I appreciate the feedback. I'll make those adjustments.
And I do have something, if I could. What's your plan on reporting to the board about your progress on these? Is it going to be quarterly? I know some of them's not going to change in a quarter, but at least you might be able to give us some update of the progress you're trying to make. So I don't know what your plan was, but I would like to see it, some progress during the year or some report throughout the year.
Sure. Well, and like I said, really, a lot of these end up being one way or another tied to the strategic plan. So if I'm coming back to you on, quarterly or minimally a biennial basis to let you know, how are we doing on these benchmarks, that would seem like a natural point in time to talk about all of these, because I think they're all ultimately intertwined very well. So.
Yeah, because we talked about not wanting to wait till the last minute to formulate some kind of evaluation. So if we got ongoing progress reports, then that would help us throughout the year, I think.
That's one of the challenges for us as a board, because I think for the last 5 years of Mr. Stokes' tenure, we had the same conversation every time about we're going to have quarterly updates, and then the data's not ready quarterly, and we have a million other things on the agenda, and so it kind of goes to the wayside. So I think that maybe that's something that Joe works with AJ on and gets a system in place for what that looks like, because it might not be quarterly. It might be once a semester, and it might be some of these things, it really might be at the end of the year.
Some of these are an annual thing.
Yeah. So I think that that's kind of, yeah. And I think Laurel wants to add in there.
Sorry, is it okay if I go?
Because she's social.
I'm so back here. It is because I'm, so I'm thinking of this though, and I, like 7 goals that he had last year, and and Mr. Fueling has 7 goals this year. But then I'm also hearing when we evaluate you, and then we're comparing it with the strategic plan, and we're kind of meshing 2 things, right? Because the superintendent evaluation form that we approved really only has 3 goals, because we didn't want to have more than that. Or we recommended limiting it. So I think we need to clarify, and I know he's going to have more goals than what we're going to put in his evaluation as the goals. So somehow we have to figure out, we have the strategic plan, it's the guiding document, but for this evaluation, let's narrow it down to this is what, like Trustee Walker was saying about what are we working on this year? Of course you're working on everything because there are all these pieces. But I think we need to have that where he's going to have goals like this, but if we want it in the evaluation, I think we just need to narrow it.
I mean, would it be fair to Mr. Fueling to maybe give him that time and maybe revisit this at the next meeting with prioritizing those 3 goals and really tying it into those things that you have the control over? Because it'd be premature to push you into it right now, and you're going to need the time to probably talk with your team and kind of suss that out a little bit.
Yeah, that I think that's fine. Yeah.
Do looking at this too, some of these goals, like maybe like goal 1 and 2, kind of incorporate in a goal in your evaluation and maybe kind of put it in that sense as well. Piece it out to us.
Yeah, you can pair some of these, like, you know,
Yeah.
some of it's an academic goal, some of it's a, you know, what a mental wellness
The
goal.
engagement goal.
Yeah. But I like the idea of finding a way to connect the two. So thanks for bringing that up. Any additional comments, or are we ready to make a motion? Rich?
When I went through these, a lot of my thought were tied to the strategic plan. The one thing I didn't really pick up, I guess, is students' outcomes or student achievement. And I don't know if we should look at that and have some kind of progress report on what the schools are doing, or if there has been progress on some of the standardized testing, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think merging those into kind of these more global, you know, goals, if you will, allows for that, because that, you know, that's an important thing, and that's something I've brought up in the past, and I think it is important. But again, we got to figure a way to make these work and not pretend we have 3 goals, but really we have 3 goals with 27 subparts or something, you know?
I would move that we table this discussion until the next meeting to give the superintendent time to formulate goals that are going to align with his evaluation.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I would second that.
Okay, any further board discussion? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, everybody's getting tired. All those in favor? Aye. Does that give you what you need? Okay. I know, I gotta do it again. It's pushing that boulder up the hill. Yeah, just keep pushing that boulder up the hill, right? Okay, 13 is approval of the consent agenda. This is for possible action.
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Sorry, who made the second?
I did.
Okay, motion and a second. Board discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Item 14, informational items. This is for discussion only, no action. Every board member's had a chance to look at this. Any questions, comments on that? Seeing none. Item 15, request for future agenda topics. Seeing none, we're going to move to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.